I jumped ahead. There's a countdown clock right in front of my face, and I still jumped ahead. So good to see everybody here. We'll give it another minute or so for everyone to join in. So we already had a couple questions pop up, and one pertinent one is what report should I have open today, which I already answered. So we're talking about hormones, but we are also going to talk about habits. And why are we doing that? Because most of you have been with us for a series of calls now. Some of you may be joining tonight for the first time, but most of you have been here for a series of these types of calls, and this would make this the final one. In which case, we also wanted to arm you with, now that you have a deeper understanding of how to use these reports, how do you actually take action? And so we're going to talk a little bit about habit formation, which is really important in terms of taking this knowledge and turning it into outcomes, right? So as everyone joins, as before, use the Q&A box for questions. We're going to start with a presentation, just walking through the hormone cascade, helping you understand it. I'm actually going to share my screen because there's a visual. This particular system, I think we need to look at visually as opposed to just speaking through the concerns, because it really is a cascade. And that's why we uniquely, in terms of genetic reporting, look at hormones. Most genetic testing companies that you'll go out there and find don't really look at the hormone cascade that well, because as you all know now, after having heard a few of these calls, that genetics interprets things gene by gene. This gene means this gene means that. And you've now seen, after hearing how we interpret things, that that's a very it's an incomplete interpretation, because once you think about when we had our discussion about the brain and how just looking at a chemical versus looking at how you binds and how you clear it, and there's layers and layers to the interpretation that make it more rich and more precise. And that's nowhere more important than in hormones. In hormones, if you don't look at the cascade, you can't really do much. The outcome is very, very low. And so we are going to look at it in that context. Now, before we get going, I wanted to ask everybody here a question, which is, well, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. One of them was now, and one is going to be a little later. So you can have, that's a little bit of drama for you and some anxiety being dropped. The first one is, we want to make sure that we support who needs us, right? So it's not just who wants us, but if you're here today, you're really trying to get value out of this. You can see that we're not here for any reason other than to give you that value, other than to just give you more information in the reports that we aren't allowed to necessarily hand over to a consumer, clinical information, but we can speak to, right, in a group setting like this. So that's all our intention is, as you know, is to just make sure we give you what you need, and that your questions are answered. And so we want to know, when the first thing I said is, whoever is here is who needs us more than just who wants us. Like, this is important to you. So we want to know where you came from. In order to reach more of the people that need us, it's very easy for us to go sell tests. We sell them every day, but we want to reach the people that are truly stuck, that truly need us, that are going to get the biggest outcome. So if you don't mind, I wanted to take a minute right now. We're going to drop a link into your chat to ask you one question. And that question is simply, where did you come from? Right? And there's a few areas where we know we work in, whether it's medical summits that some of you attended, it could be just straight advertising, it could be a podcast you listen to. We want to know, for you that are here, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that we've dealt with, if you're here, you really need us, and we want to work with people that need us. And so let's drop that in, guys, whoever's managing that. I'm going to give you a link. And sorry, when I meant where you're from, not literally, I just meant, where did you hear about us? Meaning, was it in a podcast? Sorry, Olga. Yeah, let me be more clear. Where did you hear about us? So, okay, we're getting a lot of answers here. We're getting Instagram podcast. So there's a mixture of a little bit of everything. Oh, somebody from the shopping channel. and if you don't mind, when you say podcast, just clarify which one, if you can remember, right? I understand that a lot of you listen to multiple things, so you may not remember which one, but it is helpful to know. Well, thank you for all the answers. Autism Hope Alliance, we haven't been there for a while. That's an amazing organization. Anyone here that's working with a child behavioral development issue, very important place to go. They're sort of more forward thinking. So it looks like it's a mixture of everything. So it looks like we should just keep doing what we're doing. Okay. Buddy Chachinsky, an amazing guy. I think he's in Michigan. He's a functional medicine doctor, does amazing work. Dr. Pollock, another amazing guy. He actually sent me an EMF device. So my hand was literally, when I travel, I'm on my phone a lot because I'm in contact constantly with the office, etc. I try and put it down as much as I can and not hold it, but often it's in my hand, texting, responding, and so I feel like it fries, like literally like a microwave. So Dr. Pollock, who was mentioned here, actually sent me a PEMF device for my hand, which worked wonders. So we're seeing a mixture of a little bit of everything. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So thank you for taking that time. It's really helpful. And what I see, if I take all of what I see in a nutshell, it's like it's a little bit of everything, right? So which is to me very encouraging because everybody from everywhere seems to need our help, which is, this is what we're here for, right? So it's amazing that we're able to, wherever we go, there's a need for what we do, which is empowering. When we're going to keep going, we're going to keep going on all fronts according to what we see here, right? Well, if everybody said, hey, we all saw you on the Ari Whitten podcast, we'd say, okay, we kind of understand who needs more help, and that's where we're going to go. But it looks like it's a little bit everything, so we're going to keep going. All right, guys, so we're going to jump into, and thank you for that. Thank you for taking the time to answer. Let me know if you want to get in front of GoBundance. We'll get in front of anybody. That's our intention, is let's get in front of everybody and everyone. And Bradley, I can drop my email in here and we'll drop the client care email in here. Connect with me and we'll work on that. So here's my email. This is for Bradley. Docs to deal with hormone issues. Perfect. What a transition. Wendy's like a producer here, getting us moving on to the hormones. Here we go. So I'm going to share, which we didn't do in the previous calls. I'm going to share a visual. Because like I said, this is my personal report, by the way, so I'm not, exposing data other than my own. And in fact, if you want to go to our website, my report is published there. I can no longer see the chat because I'm sharing the screen, so I won't be able to see your questions for the next few minutes. But my intention is to go through this report, which is not a report that you have access to because it's a clinical document. This is more a research document that we use internally, but it paints the picture of what I wanted you to see. And so again, just to be clear, this is a document that is internal to us. It is not a consumer document because there's clinical language in it. It's a research tool, but it paints the picture to help you visualize. And this is why we're here tonight, to help you use your data. So first of all, look at how complex the hormone cascade is. A lot of this you don't need to know. This is something where when we're researching or when a clinician is doing work or dealing with a complex problem, they may dive in and need to know nuances like this if they're dealing with hormones or, a test, a very specific blood test, but in most cases, we don't need to know. So here is what the hormone cascade looks like. And we're going to look at 3 areas in the hormone cascade, which is dominance. What do I make? And most of you have heard me speak about this at some point, or you've heard Mansoor speak about this somewhere. I've saw Mansoor's name pop up there a few times. Hormone dominance, what do I make? Hormone quality, is it toxic and threatening or not? And then hormone clearance, how well do I then clear what I just made? So before I continue, I'm just going to pop back over to the chat for a second, just to make sure anyone wasn't saying we can't see what you're sharing. So you guys are good. You can see this red light, green light, stop light document that I'm sharing? If someone could just let me know in the chat. Yeah, okay, great, thank you. Okay, got it. We're gonna keep going. All right, so on your report, you will see these genes. And there's more coming, by the way. If there's stuff you don't see, it's coming. Whether you're a man or a woman, we do the same thing. The cascade is cholesterol, which we don't look at, converts to progesterone. So it's your base hormone. Oxytocin is also a very important base, which is why relationships and high quality relationships are so important. That's where you get your oxytocin from. So progesterone converts to testosterone, converts to estrogen. So we mapped it out like this so that we can very quickly understand what dominance is. So this is me. So I, at a very aggressive level, I have the highly optimal version of the CYP17A1. Now, optimal just means that this gene is functioning really well. It doesn't mean it's the optimal result. For a woman, you don't want to see this. For a woman, you want a red light here because you don't want to be overproducing your hormones. This is where a lot of the hormone-related issues come from. So good or bad is not necessarily good or bad. It's just we're talking about the function of the gene. And in this case, I make a little too much testosterone, right? So now up here, CYP3A4 is how I would then clear that testosterone. Red light, I don't do that, which is good news for me as a guy that likes to train and be fit and all that stuff. I have access to a lot of free-flowing testosterone. I make it and it doesn't go anywhere. It's there. Red light for estrogen. I also don't do a very good job of converting it into estrogen. So this is the CYP19A1 gene, right? So take a picture of this page and then look at your genes to interpret in this context, right? And you're going to see how you can plug your results into this. So CYP17A1, how well of a job do you do making testosterone? Women want to see a red light here. Men, more of an orange light. I'm doing it a little bit too much. Then you have to look at cofactors. Okay, if I was also making estrogen at a yellow or green level, like medium to fast level, which you can see in your genes, then I would be highly estrogen dominant because not only am I testosterone dominant, but I'm turning it into something else. I'm turning it into estrogen, right? If this over here was a red light, then I'm also not converting my testosterone into what's called DHT. DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, is sort of the manly man, ripped, strided muscle version of testosterone. And I do that to some degree. And up here, you have your UGT genes, for which it's possible to have a copy number variation. You'll see in your report, there's a CNV for one of these, and then there's a typical gene result for the other one. So CNV meaning just like the GSTT genes in glutathione, 0 copies, 1 copy, 2 copy, right? So it's possible for one of these. The other one is just a basic step. So what I do is I make my testosterone a little too much, don't get rid of it, don't turn it into estrogen. I do convert it at somewhat of a medium pace into DHT, and then I also clear it at a medium pace. So that means that I have it available to use. If I don't use it, it could potentially be toxic in nature and cause things like what you see up here, a polished dome, right? This is on purpose. It's not my style of choice. It's genetic. It could also lead to prostate enlargement. In women, it can lead to ovarian cysts, acne, hair loss, just like in men. But it can also lead to a ripped six-pack and nice muscle fiber and a lot of strength at the gym. Then, if I was also estrogen dominant, not only would I have the strength, but I would also have the mass. That, the guy that deadlifts 500 pounds, that bench presses 400 pounds, that's not testosterone, that's estrogen. So the big bulky figure, same thing in women, the more curvaceous and sort of feminine features, large voluptuous features, that's estrogenization. When you have less of the feminine features, smaller hips, smaller breasts, that's more androgenization. So me as a woman, I would look more slim, smaller features, probably smaller breasts, smaller hips. The way I am as a man is I look the way I look, right? So now that's step one. I'm going to show you 3 screens. Again, take a picture of this next one also. Then we're going to go back and talk about the hormones a little bit more. But first, I want you to see the context visually. So now that we know what the map kind of looks like, what do you do when you make your hormones? How do women, particularly, and men, understand what risk there is if they are estrogen dominant. So dominance is step one. What do I make? But what quality is step two? So for me, I am androgen dominant. I make way too much testosterone, but I'm also androgen toxic because that SRT5A2 gene turns it into DHT. So now all of a sudden it's a clinical threat. It goes from this great thing of having a lot of testosterone to, yeah, but you turn it into the stuff that's highly inflammatory. So either I keep training, working out, and using it and being the Superman that sort of genetically designed to be, or I end up with inflammatory issues because there's too much of this free-flowing DHT that it causes inflammation. So for women, and this is also true for men, by the way, it's just to a much lesser degree. So for women, what you want to see is this 2-hydroxy pathway, red light, and I'll explain why. Even this being the good one, why don't you want to see a green light? These two are the troublemakers. So these genes are listed, the same CYP3A4 that gets rid of your testosterone in the first map I showed you, also turns your estrogen into what we call 16-hydroxyestrogen, which is a super potent toxin. And I can't tell you how many times we've seen women with breast cancer, men with testicular cancer, ovarian cancer in women that are highly dominant, green light here, or the fast version of the gene, which you'll see in your report, of the CYP3A4, right? Or the CYP1B1. More commonly, you're going to see the 4-hydroxy. So this is a woman for whom, if you are estrogen dominant and you have the fast version of that CYP19A1 gene, which is in your report, and you're also potentially fast in the CYP17A1, so there's also too much testosterone to begin with, feeling that estrogen, well, there's already too much of a hormone load. And if it's going into this path, well, then all of a sudden you're fueling a toxic fire. And you have an internal source of inflammation that you have to be highly mindful of, because it's going to be a constant drip of inflammatory insult. And this is why women don't do as well as men when it comes to chronic disease. Women tend to get less because they're more mindful and cognizant of what they're doing. Men are kind of like, I'll just keep going until I break myself, then I'll fix something. But for women, it's like, I want to be proactive. But when something settles in, like cognitive decline, cardiovascular disease, cancers, etc., they're harder to manage because of this cofactor of estrogen toxicity that a lot of women face. Now, going back to the first thing I said, the 2-hydroxy, these two genes, and I think only CYP1A1 is reported in your report. This is just a cofactor that we have in our data, but we don't report on, just not to confuse you. The priority is here, CYP1A1. It's in your hormone section, in the hormone summary. So why then, if this is the good clean stuff, do you not want the fast version, the green or yellow light? Why the red? Because when you get into menopause, this also becomes a threat. So up until menopause, it doesn't matter how much 2-hydroxy estrogen you have, you're good. Once you get into menopause, this also becomes potentially toxic. So having a straight 3 red lights, like what I'm blessed with, is the best place to be. If either of these are fast or optimal in your report, meaning that you see an estrogen toxicity flag, if you see estrogen toxicity noted, it's in clear language as opposed to the gene results in your summary, then go look at these genes and see where it's coming from. And why? Because when we look at the detox profile, we can be very specific of how to detox each one of these, right? It's not the same detox pathway. So let's look at that. So the third section that we have to look at is the detox pathways. Now that I know what I make, how well do I clear or eliminate, right? So here again, we have the three byproducts we're saying, 2 and 4 and 16-hydroxyestrogen. And here are familiar pathways that we've already talked about that clear each one of these. So the 2-hydroxy pathway, you want fast COMT. COMT, if you remember, is the tail end of methylation. It's the gene that clears your dopamine. It's a gene that clears your ADRA2B, that adrenaline PTSD response. It's also the gene that is at the tail end of methylation that gets the garbage out the door. It also clears 2-hydroxyestrogen. And guess what? It also clears 4-hydroxyestrogen on the far right of this image, right? So if your COMT is slow, it's already known that slow COMT is associated with a lot of specifically female hormone issues. It's not clearly understood why, but this is why. The inflammatory insults are cleared by COMT. Now, when it comes to 4-hydroxy, and I know there's some questions, we will get to them, don't worry. I can't see the chat or questions right now. I'm almost done with this, and then we'll go back to that, don't worry. So now, these two pathways, the GSTT genes, remember the glutathione genes that we talked about, I think last week? These two genes are implicit in the 4-hydroxy pathway, as well as your antioxidation, SOD2. So really, you're working on all three systems to deal with toxic estrogen byproducts. You're dealing with the GSTT glutathione pathways. You're looking at that. You're going back from your hormone report back to the immunity and inflammation section to see how you deal with this. Then you're looking at SOD2, which is the antioxidative pathway, to see how you deal with this. And you're looking at COMT. Now you know where to intervene. If your COMT is slow, that's the thing you have to speed up. If your antioxidative capacity is off, that's what you need to support. If your glutathione pathway is off, that's what you need to support, because all three of these should be firing at high levels of efficiency in order to deal with that toxic threat, if you have a toxic threat. Now, there's some people for whom they don't clearly have a toxic threat here. You know, they have a red, like myself, but they may be highly estrogen dominant. So you have to play with this a little bit, meaning you have to interpret it to some degree. They may be like, hey, I make a lot of testosterone, but this is a fast CYP191 gene, which will tell you in a report, and I make a lot of estrogen. So even though this is a red light doesn't mean zero. It means slow. So red light, I don't make much of this stuff, but there's so much estrogen coming in that slow conversion has a lot of fuel to be converted. So I'm still netting out too much. This is why you have to look at things sort of isolated from each other to understand how each step is being done, and then later combine them to understand the net result. I make way too much estrogen. I make the toxic version, and my detox pathways are broken. All three steps point to a threat. So I need to work on all of them potentially. Or you start to interpret in your context. I want to get on hormone therapy. I want to have a young brain, a good heart, strong bones. I want to get on BHRT. Well, where do I intervene? What do I do? Well, maybe if I'm not so estrogen dominant, I'm okay to add estrogen, but maybe I support the glutathione and detox of my toxic estrogen a little better. Now, all of what I'm saying, by the way, I don't recommend you just, this particular area, if there is a hormone concern, if menopause is crazy, if you have a history of PCOS, endometriosis, fibromyalgia, infertility, this is not something where, hey, thank you for joining us tonight. Go ahead with this information and run with it. This is probably the number one area where we would suggest working with a coach of some sort. You all know that we work with, functional genomics practitioners internally that can build programs for you. And I say this because it's the most highly nuanced area that requires the most interpretation. Our clinician training program in this area, I believe, is 8 hours. So I'm really summarizing in a high degree 8 hours worth of training into what it's been 20 minutes, right? So that's where I would say that, again, if there's a concern here, mom had breast cancer, mom had dementia, I don't want to go down that road. I'm starting to feel brain fog. I'm already on that slippery slope. This is probably the number one area where we would suggest working with a functional genomics coach. And to answer your question, Margaret, they range depending on what the need is. Yes, there's medical doctors, there's genomic scientists, there's nutritionists, there's health coaches. It depends what the need is, right? So yeah, now Nina, to your point, you don't have the colored graphs. So now let's go back to that to see what is, according to your report, the slow and fast version. So I'm going to open this up again. So we'll run through the genes once. If you have your report open, I mean, your report will already tell you, if you read it, look up each gene and it will tell you what version it is, but let's go through it once. So CYP17A1, that's that first gene that converts progesterone into testosterone. AA is the slow version, which is what you want as a woman. AG is probably the ideal place for a man to be. And GG is too much for both, right? So GG is the fast. This is the, again, first gene, go to your hormone summary, you will see this gene, and you'll see one of these three outcomes. What do they mean? AA means I am doing well as a woman, I'm very slow, I have a bad version of the gene, but guess what? That's actually what you want. You want it to be slow. Conversion of progesterone into testosterone, step one. GG is too fast, AJ is too fast for a woman, it's okay for a man. Then SRD5A2. This is the gene that takes the testosterone that you just made and converts it into DHT. This again is up for interpretation. Are you an Olympian? Are you a soccer player? Are you a stay-at-home mom? What are you doing, right? So you need DHT to fuel activity, or you need to be void of DHT if you're not using it. So most people, most people, the ideal is the CC, slow. I don't convert into DHT well, which means I don't make this toxic androgen byproduct, which also means I might not likely see all the ripped muscles in my shoulders, and I might not see my six-pack unless I really, really, really work hard, right? But it's a safer place to be because the reality of life, the 90 to 150 years you're going to be on this planet, depending where science goes, majority of that time you're not going to be training like an athlete, right? So this again, now we talked about conversion of progesterone into testosterone. Now step two, testosterone into DHT, and ideally CC, slow version, that's what you want. GG is a little too fast. Now the next thing, UGT2B15, now that we've made our DHT, how well do I clear it? And again, there's some interpretation here, because if you have increased glucuronidation, you have to look at two genes in combination, UGT2B15 and 2B17. This is where you can have a copy number variation. Just like in the glutathione genes, you could actually be missing the gene. So if you're that person that has the fast conversion into DHT and also has 0 copies here, now it's a toxic threat because you don't get rid of it. And you've also on top of that have the reduced slow version here, it's even more of a toxic threat. If you have the fast DHT conversion, GG, but you clear it really well, increased, and you have 2 copies of this, increased, well, it doesn't really stick around. So it's there for me to use, but it's not going to cause me crazy inflammation because I clear it really fast. So it's more of a use it or lose it type scenario. It's there for a while and then it's gone. So while it's there, I'm going to go to the gym and train, right? So that's you sort of, and again, interpreting this data. Now, CYP1981, going back to the bottom of that image, is now that we know what we did with our testosterone, how much of it do we convert into estrogen? If you have the CC of this gene, CYP1981, then you, like myself, do a really bad job of converting testosterone into estrogen, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I actually feel better that way based on my goals, right? Some women want to be here. You want to make a little bit of estrogen, and you want to be able to have whatever figure you desire, your skin, your hair, even brain activity, bone activity, it's all driven by estrogen. So long as you're not surrounded by estrogen mimics and being overloaded and taking birth control pills, then this is a healthy place to be. This is too much for most women, right? So this is the fast increased conversion of CYP1981, which means way too much estrogen, which again, we first have to think about your habits, your environment, your lifestyle, etc., before we come to a sum total answer. Yes or no, too much, too little. We have to consider more than just this. Right? Hormones are highly contextual. What are you doing right now? What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? Do your hormones align with that or misalign? That may give you a better answer of if you're going to be feeling well or not, right? So now we've looked at hormone dominance. We're now going to look at hormone toxicity. So, this is just the science explanation of these genes. One sec, going to the next section of map. So now CYP1A1, this is the gene that converts your estrogen, now that you've made it, into 2-hydroxyestrogen. And AA is the slow version, which is what you want. AG or GG is not what you want. It may be beneficial when you're younger, but when you get into menopause, you then again need to interpret for a different context where you're making too much of this toxin, and you need to then support it with COMT activity, right? Fast COMT. Once you get post-menopausal. Pre-menopause, this is actually a good thing. So this is the 2-hydroxy pathway. When you're premenopausal, it's okay to be in any one of these buckets. Once you get postmenopausal, you want the AA, and if you don't have it, you probably want to speed up your COMT to clear this stuff. CYP1B1 is how you make your 4-hydroxyestrogen. And what you don't want to see on your report is a CG or a GG. If you see a CG or a GG, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you work with one of our functional genomics practitioners to be more nuanced on where to intervene. They have to look at the whole hormone cascade, your glutathione pathway, antioxidant pathway, all your habits, lifestyle. What are the other inputs that you're dealing with that you maybe didn't even consider? I would really recommend you work with someone there. You know, things like dementia, cardiovascular disease, breast cancer are so prevalent. This is why they're prevalent, right? So this is the exact area where I would recommend somebody work with a coach. So CC is what you want, the slow conversion, especially given today's hormone mimicking and hormone toxic environment. But CG and GG, I would recommend you speak to us about coaching. 16-hydroxy. AA is what you want, the slow version, right? AG and GG is scary, bad news. Scary in the context that if you're not going to deal with it, it's going to point to a problem, but we can very easily deal with it. This is the whole point of why you got this information, is so that you know what to prioritize. Now that you know, oh, I'm 16-hydroxy GG, wow, that is like a path to breast cancer. Okay, now I know that I'm going to avoid breast cancer. That's actually very empowering. For a man, I can tell you, we were working with a mother-son family, and the mother had breast cancer and the son had testicular cancer twice because of this 16-hydroxyestrogen, and they were estrogen dominant. So, this is where, again, if we had met them earlier, we could have told them, here's the exact habits you need that are aligned to your genome to not get sick. And by the way, here's the habits that if you were to adopt, you're probably not going to do so well. Something's going to kick in and cause you a problem. So again, this is not meant to be a threat that's scary. This is meant to be an opportunity. Regardless of age, if you're in a disease state, let's work on reversing it because we now know the root cause. If you're not in a disease state and you want to prevent, here you go. We just found the roadmap, right? So now we've looked at toxicity. We're going to skip ahead to clearance. And I think this is going to answer a lot of the questions that I saw in the chat. So COMT, again, now this is going to be in the inflammation immunity section of your report. This is not, in fact, I think some of it may be in the hormone section, except for COMT maybe, because we do, our algorithm interprets that. But it may be there, take a look, but make a note that GG is the fast version, right? You clear your dopamine fast, you clear your methylation fast, and you clear your 2 and 4-hydroxy fast. AA is the slow version. AA and AG are both problematic and need support. How to support? This is, again, anything in the hormone world, we always recommend coaching. I can go tell you, go take the supplement. There's a product called SAMe that speeds up your COMT, but then it's going to go mess with your brain. It's going to go mess with your methylation. So, if we slow it down. So we have to be very careful. This is not up until now, we've spent many hours together. Everything I've said is go ahead and take this information and run with it. Other than a few clinical questions people brought up where I said, I really recommend you should deal with a coach. Here, I'm going to say carte blanche, anything hormones, you should be working with somebody if you have a concern. It's very nuanced and complex. And there's no way without clinical training that there should be confidence in just running with this stuff. High level, great. You understand yourself, go to work. When there's an actual problem, like a condition, like I'm trying to avoid breast cancer, I see a red flag of breast cancer. My mom had dementia. That's where it's not, there's no forum where I could just hand over information to you to just go self-serve, right? So that was comped. GSTT, we're looking for, again, a copy number variation. 0 or 1 copies is not helpful here. 2 copies is what you want. If you have 0 or 1, then you need support with glutathione. We said earlier that if you are suboptimal in the GSTT, that taking glutathione on its own is not good. You need more precursors, right? We make something called Detox Optimizer, and you can get NAC or glycine or any of these things on your own also. GSTP is another thing to be considered. The AA version is the optimal. So if you have the AA, nothing to be concerned of here. You're doing a good job of detoxing. AG or GG means you're not doing a good job, which mean airborne toxins, in particular for the GSTP1, are a problem. And your glutathione and precursor utilization isn't supporting clearance of hormones. So you probably need supplementation there. And you also need to look at total load, because it's not only hormones, it's everything else that glutathione is trying to deal with. And last, GSTM1, we said, is the detox of the gut. This is kind of a secondary concern when it comes to hormones. GSTT1 and TP1 are really what you need to focus on and prioritize. But if you see a big red flag here, like what I have, 0 copies, well, then I may also need to consider extra support here, right? I may have seen that I had the best GSTT, best GSTP, but my GSTM1 is 0. So I would only action this in the extremes, right? Otherwise, it's more of a supporting character. Then we talked about your antioxidant pathway, your mitochondrial support. So we talked about this earlier. CC, we talked about this last week. CC is the ideal antioxidant pathway. There's also GPX, which we talked about last week, which should be aligned. So if your SOD2 is a CC, but your GPX is a TT, you're still not doing well. You still need support here. These things need to be aligned. So again, CT, TT for your SOD2 pathway are the red flags. I don't do a good job here. I need support. And we talked about what those supports are. Mitochondrial support, breath holding, sauna, urolithin A, MitoPure, mitochondrial optimizer. These are all the things that you dip into to support the mitochondria. And those are the clearance genes. So now, again, wanted to paint a deeper picture of based on the data that you're sitting on, what the gene, how you overlay the gene outcomes and the images that we looked at, right? So having now you've looked at the hormone map, we've understood that there's 3 areas of consideration. There's hormone dominance. What do I make? That's the first thing you need to understand. I think you're now better armed to determine that. There's hormone toxicity, both for your estrogens and the SRD pathway for your androgens, right? Then there is your hormone clearance, which happens through all the pathways we just talked about, and particularly for your DHT through the UGT genes, and for your testosterone through CYP3A4, the same gene that makes your 16-hydroxyestrogen. I'm seeing a couple comments here, and again, up until now, I haven't been able to see your comments. I've been looking at the report on a different screen. So co-dominance means you're dominant in both. It doesn't mean you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It means you are dominant, truly dominant in both. So think of it as like your schizophrenic hormones. You got both going on, which also means that based on your habits and what you're doing, you likely could experience both, right? So you likely could, on days where you decide to be training and days where you decide to work out and be part of like a resistance training team or a wrestling team, you're going to be more androgenized. On days where you decide to be more laid back, etc., you're going to be more estrogenized. Your body will give you what you demand of it. So this is actually a phenomenon where the more you put yourself in the warrior state, meaning fighting, leaning into things, leaning forward and fighting, your body gets more androgenized. And the more your body gets more androgenized, the more it projects you into this warrior state. And it just keeps going and it keeps going and keeps going. And that's why you see these athletes that just reach this peak explosive phase right? But the opposite is also true. The more you lean back and decide to take a break from things, the more your body gets estrogenized, because your body's giving you what you're asking for, right? And the more you get estrogenized, the more your body decides to lean back and relax and take care of things. And then you go in a loop that way. So when you're co-dominant, you have a choice, right? You truly have a choice. And you can lean in either direction based on your habits. When you're not co-dominant, when you have a singular dominance, estrogen or androgen dominance, that's who you are. And yes, you can tweak that. We know supplements that will slow down the CYP19A1 pathway. We make a product, for example, called Female E, which means female estrogen dominant. If you are estrogen dominant, you take that product, it literally slows down the genetic expression of the CYP19A1 gene. So if you have the fast version, it will actually slow it down. We've learned what ingredients actually augment gene expression. So as opposed to masking the symptom as the outcome of that gene expression, we actually directly affect the gene to slow it down, right? So, and same thing is true, like, for example, Dominic just mentioned COMT. Well, we know what ingredients speed COMT up and slow it down depending on what you need. So that's where you can intervene. There are some like baseline easy things to do, like female E, female A. We make these, we make male A and male E. You know, we have some men that say, hey, I have gynecomastia, I have man boobs, I don't feel right. Okay, take some male E. And I actually have a friend, anyone that's been here that sees the commercial, the video afterwards that plays, the videographer that actually made that is highly estrogen dominant. And so he's been taking our male E product, and all of a sudden his anxiety is way down. His body has changed without any other change in his diet or exercise. He is more, call it, ambitious at work, right? So his both his cognition and his physiology has changed because we've understood how to change the gene expression of the root cause, and he becomes a different person in a very safe and healthy way. So slow down conversion of DHT. We make a product called Male A, male androgen dominant, and that's what we use. So if you want, you can go to our website and look at the label. The ingredients are right there. So you may have access to these ingredients already. You may already have the same thing sitting in your shelf, or you may have somebody that you work with that you trust, right? We have the products on our website, but we also post the labels there so that you know what's in them, and you can work on it on your own also. You know what ingredients to seek, right? So that was hormones. And we've tried to take something highly complex and simplify it as much as possible to give you exactly what you need to get the maximum outcome, meaning ROI. If you're going to put your time and effort into this, what's the quickest, easiest thing you can do that's going to give you an outcome, right? I could go way deeper into hormones, and there's people that know more about hormones than I've ever even heard that we can bring on as experts, but that stuff is not going to be, it's not going to drive the needle for you. That's when you get stuck. That's when you've already done 90% and you're getting really good and like, now I want to be superhuman about it. Let me do a little bit extra. You know, we're not there. Where we're at is, here's the majority of what the majority of people need to know. So most people around, this is all of what you need to know. Yes, there's more, but it's gonna, if you've gone from 10 to 90%, it's gonna take you the same effort to go from 90 to 95%. And it's not really gonna make that much of an impact. So that's how we've designed the report to give you exactly what we think you need. So Wendy's saying co-dominant was great all of my life. She had a six-pack, lean muscle. Her COMT was slow, so challenge with toxicity for sure. And she had weight gain definitely in co-dominance, weight gain in menopause as hormones fall off a cliff and your body's not used to that, and then all of a sudden you start to pack on fat. So there's things you can do there for sure. Rosacea. So the way we think about conditions like rosacea, there's the actual condition itself, right? Then there's, why is it expressing the way it is? Rosacea, melasma, even eczema, different things like this. The skin, the cellular structure of the skin needs to be healthy. And I would say the biggest threat against that today is your seed oils and linoleic acid and omega-6. The reason why everyone needs sunscreen today is because of what we eat. Our ancestors didn't. And there are people walking around today that don't need it because of what they eat. Right. So I would say when we're looking at these skin conditions, yes, look at all these pathways and everything we talked about to see what's driving it. But a big driver for a lot of people is linoleic acid and omega-6 and the inflammation that it causes to your skin cells. So you're already at that tipping point, and anything can be a catalyst. Anything can take you over the edge. I didn't have the weight gain until I lost the hormones. Yeah, that's what I mean. When your hormones fall off a cliff, so you were androgenized, right? You were co-dominant, and then your hormones drop in nature because of your you get into menopause, and then what's left. Keep in mind that innately, irrespective of the map, women are more estrogenized than men. If you have a man and a woman with the exact same map, but you measure the man and woman, there's still going to be more estrogen in the woman, right? It's a female sex hormone. It gets used in both bodies, but so ultimately when your hormones fall off a cliff, your testosterone goes from like 5, 6 to 0, and your estrogen goes from 8 to 2, right? Something along those lines. And that's why the weight gain will settle in, because there's no more androgenization. Androgenization gets affected a lot more. So osteoporosis, certainly when your estrogens get depleted, bone health also gets depleted, right? And when your vitamin D is off, which we look at, we already had a discussion around diet and nutrition. So go look at your vitamin D cascade. It's very important to personalize your dosing of vitamin D. And it's also important to look at estrogenization. You may be that person that doesn't have enough estrogen going into menopause and should consider hormone treatment. This is, again, a place where I would hate for you to just run for that with that information and go with it. You should highly seek, I would highly recommend you seek out coaching, because it's a very nuanced area. In fact, we can't even offer hormones until someone's been through a medical intake and seen a clinician. Sorry, someone's asking me a specific question. Request from Jason. Oh, Jason, do you mind answering Mary Hennick's question? Mary Hennick is specifically wanting to speak to Jason. So Jason, if you don't mind, just look up Mary Hennick. She has something that she needs from you. So it was at 7:43 p.m. Okay, so now the next thing we're going to talk about, I know that there's 45 questions in the Q&A box. Before we go there, we're going to talk about the second half of what we were meant to talk about, and then we'll go back to the questions. And I'm sure, just like you've seen in every other call, we're all thinking about the same stuff. So your questions will likely get answered in the Q&A. There's a lot of repeat. So habit formation, why is this so important? This is not part of your reports. But again, we put these calls together to offer you the maximum outcome based on what we know you need that you may not know you need yet, because we've been through this so many thousands of times with so many patients. So we kind of understand what's needed. Here's all of your 24,000 genes. We're only talking to you about 100 of them. And out of those 100, we're only talking to you about a very few things. And we think out of these 4 sessions that we've had together, we are going to fix the majority of what needs fixing out there. So we've tried to take this complexity and make it simple. We've tried to summarize and condense. We've tried to curate, right, and give you exactly what you need. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. And so we try to remove that overwhelm. And another part of removing the overwhelm and giving you exactly what you need is, well, I get it now. I am better armed to navigate these reports. I'm going to get more value than I ever thought before, because I am now a junior PhD when I read these reports, as opposed to a layperson. Like, I have that level of knowledge now thanks to these calls. Now, how do I do this stuff? Right? So we did not claim to be experts in that area. So we sought out an expert. We sought out the best. And we called someone who was a colleague at the time, Dr. BJ Fogg. He wrote the book Tiny Habits. Tiny Habits, New York Times bestseller around habit formation and change. He runs the Stanford University Behavioral Change Lab. And to give you an idea of the impact of his science, Instagram was built by 2 students who attended his class and said, wow, we got to build an app based on this. So Instagram is literally BJ Fogg's behavioral change science that was then turned into a behavioral change app. It seems like a social media app. It's actually a behavioral change app, which causes you to stay hooked, right? Noom, some of you may have seen Noom, the weight loss app, was also designed by his students. So anyways, he's had a major impact in the area of behavioral change. We said, we know kind of what's wrong and how to fix it. Here's all our reports. Now, how do we get people to do it? So if I take the 1 year of work that we did with him and I summarize it into something that fits in this call, here's what it looks like. And here's exactly, by the way, why health coaching is so important, that and a value that people don't understand or apply until after they've gone through it. It's easy to say, I need a doctor, right? I need a doctor because the doctor knows and can prescribe, and I feel safe. I have a lump, I have a rash, I have a headache. Let me go to the doctor just to be safe, right? It's not easy to understand. Health coach, what's that? They can't prescribe medication. They can't tell me what to do. They don't sell anything. Like, what is this person? This is what this person is, which is everything that you're not getting from the doctor. I'm hurt. I go there. I see them. I might see them again in 6 months. Everything in between is what matters. Everything in between is where health happens. What I describe with a doctor is where masking illness happens. Health happens in the in-between. Am I actually able to pull my garbage out to the driveway? Am I actually able to take my supplements on time, et cetera, et cetera? So if I, again, take the 1 year of work we did with him and distill it into 6 points, which is what our programs are designed around, these 6 key points. This is how, and now make note of this, right? Because this isn't sort of available anywhere. Yes, for sure, matter of finances. And Graziella, this is exactly why I'm sharing this with you, because some people can't work with a coach, right? So this is why I'm giving you this information, exactly what Graziella just said, that sometimes it's a matter of finances. It can be expensive because it's not covered by insurance, et cetera, because it's not drugs. This is exactly why I'm about to tell you what I'm about to tell you, so that you are armed and can do it. Right? That's my intention here, is to give you what we know so you can do it. If you decide that you need a coach or you need help, whatever, we're here. But what I'm going to tell you will allow you to do it. So make note of these 6 key points. You're going to pick something that you need to fix. Let's look at something simple like sleep. I can't sleep properly. We're going to go back to our reports, and we now know how to figure out why we can't sleep. I have a circadian rhythm issue. I don't particularly, but somebody here may, right? I learned that I have a circadian rhythm issue. Now, how do I fix it? Well, I know that if I have a circadian rhythm issue, I can't handle blue light. Unlike my peers and my family, I need to turn my laptop off 2 hours before bed. So the very first thing we do when we're working with this type of format of getting you to actually implement and change the behaviors and ultimately on the other end become a new version of yourself is just identify the habit, what we call the golden habit. We're not even asking you to do it. All we're saying is think about the problem that you're trying to fix. I can't sleep. Think about the genetic finding. My circadian rhythm is broken. And now just think about designing a golden habit. What is a golden habit? Easy to do, low hanging fruit, zero resistance, no cost. Nobody's going to make fun of you. That thing that is just so easy. And you're just thinking about it. You're not even doing it. And you're spending just a week thinking about it. Why? Because it starts to connect those neurons. And it starts to get your body into that warrior leaning forward state of I'm doing this thing. And it starts to remove all the resistance. And it starts to make you think of alternatives, not just the one thing. And it changes your physiology. It changes your cells. It changes everything. And it gets you prepared instead of go do this, right? Which is a faster path to give up, quit, burnout. Let's just think about it. And in that, by the end of that first week or 10 days, whatever you take to design your golden habit, you would have come up with something like, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to not have blue light before sleep. After that, you're done then with step 1. Step 2 of 6 is designing the habit. And it sounds very simple. Like it sounds like, let's move on. Let's move faster here. No, this is where you need to spend a lot of time. This is why people fail. This is why things don't stick. This is why there isn't a permanent change. This is why things are temporary. And then you move on to the next podcast or the next book, and then that doesn't work either. You're spending time just thinking about what's that golden habit, the one thing that's going to give me ROI, that's easy, that's free, that's all this stuff, right? Next stage, whether it's a week or 10 days, you're just designing the habit. What does designing the habit mean? I've decided no blue light before bed. That's the habit. That means I need to turn off my laptop and my phone. I'm usually not doing that at night, so I'm going to do that. So how do I design the habit? Well, maybe I'm going to find a drawer in my basement, and I'm going to set an alarm on my phone at 9 p.m. And every day at 9 p.m., that alarm goes off, and I go to the basement and I put my laptop and my phone in that drawer so that it's far away from the kitchen, the TV, the bedroom, the washroom. And I'm not tempted to use it. It's a sort of lock and key physical distance change that prevents me from actually accessing. So that's designing the habit. You're taking this concept of no blue light, and again, that now by this time we spent 2 to 3 weeks just on this one thing. And the amount of time you're thinking, you're taking time every day, 15, 20 minutes every day, not to do the work, not to take the pills, not to run on the treadmill, just to plan it or identify it and then design it. By the end of that, you're already well on the path towards identity change, right? Towards this stuff being permanent, towards the people around you, like they also are changing, right? So now step 3 is what we call scaling the habit. Scaling the habit means that I've now figured out, okay, laptop, let's get rid of it. Set an alarm, put a thing in my basement. Now I'm going to take this thing that I did and make it a little more difficult. And there's a couple different ways to scale the habit. One is I'm going to add extra stuff. I've gotten used to this. I've been doing this for a week now, and it's truly a habit now. Now even my internal circadian rhythm clock knows that alarm is about to go off in 10 minutes. I'm used to it now, right? So I'm at that point where this is a habit. I'm going to scale it by maybe also turning off the TV, maybe by also investing in buying blue light filter glasses, maybe by also dimming the lights, and my family now understands why I do that, right? Maybe by also telling my coworkers, do not text or call me after 9 p.m. because I'm not available. I have a clinical issue I have to deal with my circadian rhythm. So you're scaling the habit and adding additional things to make that habit more robust with a better outcome. Scaling the habit also could mean taking that existing habit and moving it to other places. For example, I also now have an alarm set in my office, not when I'm at home. There's some days where I work late, and I'm going to make sure that at the office, things are done differently. I also have to go visit my mom at Christmas time, and I'm going to let her know, do you mind if at 9 p.m. everything shuts off because I have a sleep issue? So scaling the habit could mean taking this thing that's now working, that's truly a habit, adding to it to make it more robust, or extending it into other places or other people, that what it wasn't originally intended for, making the habit more complex. So now step 3 of 3. Step 4, we've done all of this. You're probably a good month and a half into habit change right now. And all we've done is worked on one habit. But the impact it's had on your thinking, who you are, the path you've now adjusted, your trajectory has gone from this path towards disease and kind of realigning to a different path. It's much more impactful than the habit itself if you're spending this depth, high quality time on that habit. So step 4 is I'm going to now do this over again. Step 1, 2, 3 with something that's difficult. On that day 1, when I was just identifying the habit, the very first things that I crossed off the list that like, no, I'm not doing that right now. All I'm doing is putting my laptop away. And that could be something like, I am installing dimmer switches throughout my house. That's an investment. It could be that I'm buying blackout blinds with 0 light leakage, right? It could be that I'm canceling my Netflix subscription because I'm a binger and I can't stop. So the difficult thing that you weren't willing to do on day 1 because it was more expensive, because it was time consuming, because it was hard to let go, the same exact 1, 2, 3 step process you're going to do on that difficult thing, but it's going to be so much easier to do it because of your new mindset. Yes, slow comped or bingers, exactly. And then if you have the GGDRD2, the high dopamine, it's even more so. So that's where you now take that thing and you're identifying a hard habit, which you wouldn't have been able to do on day one. You probably would have quit. Now this thing becomes easy. This almost feels like this thing was on day one, right? It feels like that easy habit because you're used to this. This is who you are now. So step 5, you're gone through these 3 steps through that 4th identification of a difficult habit. You're probably into month 2, potentially month 3 even at this point. And now we're saying, okay, I've gotten really good at this and I feel invincible. And you're probably already doing it on multiple other habits because it's just part of who you are now, right? So what you're now doing is I am going to likely stop saying things like, I am trying this or I am doing this, but I am this. Identity change. That's where you want to be. Identity change isn't, I got a gym membership. Identity changes, I work out. You know, when there's a conversation about bench presses going on, you join the conversation like, yeah, I couldn't handle that weight. You know, no, I take my protein powder. Like I work out, I have identity change. I don't even remember what it was like to not be that person. And if you go through the process the way we said, this bigger goal comes much faster. All this thinking and trying on small stuff allows this bigger thing to happen faster. And this is why we do it in this methodology, as opposed to like, hey, we need to change your identity. You need to be a gym bro, right? No, that's very difficult. Identity change is very difficult. It's hard for people to let go of their identity, but doing it this way allows the brain to turn on and turn off all the right switches. So that's step 5 is identity change. You want to own it. You want to start using that language. You want to start having Oura ring challenges with people at work. Like, hey, I'm a good sleeper. Do you want to check your sleep score? Like it's identity change. It's who you are and you're celebrating it. The final step, step 6, which then again becomes purposeful, you have to work on this, is you've now you're now implementation. I do it. This is who I am. You go from being an implementer to an advocator, where you start changing the people around you. Your friends and family are changing. When you go to Christmas dinner, the dinner looks different now because of you being there. And people now have learned what they should be doing. When you go to work, the culture at work has changed because of you. Your kids think differently because of you. So when you start to change the people around you, that is so permanent, it's very difficult to unravel. Very difficult. The community around you is now changing, and the habit extends from you to them. And not only the habit, but even the mindset of valuing habits of this nature, right? Valuing improvement, valuing self-care. The people around you who maybe were naysayers, like, oh, you're flaky, putting these creams on yourselves and measuring your food. And now they understand the value of adding 10, 15, 20 years to their life, and they're doing it too. So that's the ultimate goal, because when you go from, you know, I want to figure out how to sleep, to like everybody in my office has an Oura ring and we have a sleep challenge daily, and I created that, that's very difficult to unwind, and it opens the door to so many other things, right? So now that's the process you want to go through when it comes to habit change. And again, you guys are going to get the recording if you want to listen to this again. I'm sure some of you took your notes, but take your time on this and you'll see how it went from this very slow step by step to a progression to something very big quickly, right? And it sounds like, well, how do we go from here to here all of a sudden? Because if you do it in this way, that's what happens. This is how things become very permanent, impactful. So you do this very slow at the beginning, and then the power that it creates, the momentum on the end, and these big picture goals of identity change and changing the people around me, they're automatic, they're built in. But you of course there's some intention there, but it's so much easier to do. So this is where we wanted to arm you with what outside of clinical interpretation, right? Outside of clinical knowledge and being able to recommend things, this is what coaching is about, right? So the difference between this is somebody supporting you, accountability. Some people just need accountability. They're not going to do it, right? Some people need convenience. Like, I just want someone to call me and help me. I don't have time to figure this out. Some people want the knowledge. Like, I want somebody that knows what to do. I can't figure it out. So that's where coaching is useful. But this tool I've just given you of these 6 steps, you can take any problem and drop it into this modality and solve it. Solve it to the point where it's permanent, and even the people around you are changing and the community is changing, right? So that's kind of the process you want to go through. So now we have 40 questions in the Q&A box. Before we do that, you may have got an email saying that there was a special announcement tonight. Now this is based on your demand and request on us. We're always listening. We're always trying to do what you need, which is why we're here tonight. We're here tonight because too many people said, I don't understand this, I don't get this. So we're like, well, we're not going to leave people like that. Let's help them understand and help them get this. Too many people said that I can't pay for coaching right now. Okay, so we'll help you. That's why we're here tonight. A lot of people have said that I have more questions. I don't necessarily need coaching. There's like 1 or 2 things I'm trying to fix. And I want to be able to just get on a call and do it. So we launched a subscription program, which I know a lot of you know about already, that exists. Or the cash flow issue, like Wendy said, just straight out practical matters, right? Having to prioritize things. And so we figured we're going to create, so we're getting a lot of amazing feedback on this interaction. Me sitting with you and giving you what you need, right? I don't claim to be the most intelligent person in the room, but I have a lot of experience in what we do because I've been on the back of the lab working on it for years. Our clinical team, there's people on our team that know far more than me in certain areas than I could ever learn. Between Dr. Laura and Dr. Krista and Justin and everybody, Dr. Burkle, our CMO, there's stuff that they know that blows my mind. But in the specific areas that you have questions about, we've been able to support you in this format. So what I'm saying to you is we said we were going to announce something, and that announcement is the ability to do this in a more intimate setting with me and you, where there's less people, so you can dive deeper into your problem. The only way to do that is through a paid session. We're trying to make it as economical as possible, but we also understand that only you know what you want and need. So one last thought before we get to your questions is we have a form for you to allow you to tell us what you want. And we're going to put that into the chat. And that's going to allow you to say, hey, if these options were available, I wish I could do this. And then we're going to go make that thing for you. So we've narrowed it down based on conversations that we've had with you guys on, like, here's what we think you need. So based on all that, we came up with 3 options. We're going to give you those 3 options. Anyone here that has the time, go look at it. Tell us your feedback, and we are likely going to come out and offer you those things. So take a look in the chat that's coming. And I'm going to open your questions now and go to that. So is there science? So Sue's question, is there scientific data available demonstrating the 10 PIU? Oh, sorry. Yes. There's people, like there's a guy named Dr. Mark Gordon, who we do work with, who works on military veterans, that does 50,000 IU, right? So 10,000 IU is considered low, right? In the functional medicine context. Keep in mind that our beliefs are all rooted in Health Canada and FDA recommendations. Now, if we're going to go down another rabbit hole, I can tell you 2 hours about what I think about those recommendations, but 1,000 IU is not what a human needs, right? So 10,000 IU is perfectly safe, depending on your genetic profile. Make sure you're taking K2 with it, because high dose vitamin D equals calcification. So K2 mitigates that. And typically when you get a liquid D3, it already has K2 in it, right? Okay, so answer that. which section of the 360 report has habit development genes listed? There's no habit development genes. There are mood and behavior genes that speak to your cognitive profile, your executive function, as we call it. That was the very first session we did. So Marianne, if you weren't part of that session, look for the replay. A replay was sent. If you were part of it, then go back to that thinking that we had there around mood and behavior and what motivates you, what drives you. You can start to tailor your program based on your motivation, meaning, are you more reward seeking? Are you more of a binger? Do you need more structure? So all of those things, you know, are driven by neurochemicals. So that I would go back to the first call to answer that. Sorry, some people are saying the same, they didn't see the link. Someone's going to put it in there. And yes, it is the coffee with cash, even though I don't drink coffee. I'll do it for you guys. So, okay, Kim, how do you determine if trouble sleeping is hormone based or stress related? Probably too young for menopause. Don't feel stressed. Or the word sleep optimizer has helped, but historically, I've never had trouble sleeping. Kim, if you don't mind dropping into the chat right now, how old you are? Not into the Q&A, but into the chat. 44. Okay. And when did how long ago did your sleep problems start? How many years ago? I asked this because the sleep optimizer is helping you. 44. So there's two possible outcomes here. Serotonin dysregulation and the sleep disruption that it causes increases with age for a couple of reasons, because our gut health declines with age, given our current reality. And so your gut is where you make your serotonin. The second reason is that our cognitive decline based on mitochondrial drop and your brain having high density of mitochondria leads to circadian rhythm and other things breaking. So it comes back to pretty big fermented food eater. So gut's in good shape, right? So this is likely a perimenopause issue. You're probably and today we're seeing women in their 30s in perimenopause. You're in a hormone environment that is highly disruptive. We're seeing women literally in their early 30s, right? So now I'm almost certain what we're talking about is perimenopause. If you want to dig into that, again, that's the one area when it comes to hormones that I say, you should be speaking to someone on the coaching side, or maybe email us more questions, but that's likely a perimenopause symptom. Your hormones are depleting. You might consider getting onto hormones and your sleep will be fixed. If you want to connect, just drop a note in the chat for someone to connect with you, even if it's just the hormone treatment without coaching, just to get onto hormones. That is something that will help you sleep for sure, almost certainly. So somebody please connect with Kim. Kim, if you don't mind, or someone can direct message Kim and get her set up for hormones. That's going to really help you. Best for estrogen metabolite toxins. So I think the question that Patricia is asking is, how do I best clear my estrogen metabolites, the toxic ones? You have to, again, go back to what we just looked at, which is which metabolite. Is it 2, 4, or 16? And then go back to this recording to see which detox pathway clears that particular one. So which one are you dominant in, right? And then what pathway clears that stuff? So, for example, COMT clears 2-hydroxy. So this recording, go back to it, you're going to get it, and dive deep into which toxic metabolite you make, and then which pathway clears that one. Which gene is the DHT? SRD5A2. SRD5A2 is the gene that converts your testosterone into DHT. If you have the fast version, you're doing that too much, which is too much DHT. And if you have the slow clearance, which are the UGT genes, UGTB17, UGTB15, then you're not clearing it well either, and then it becomes a problem. Barb Smith is asking longevity program. Jason Prawl is amazing. We've done some work with him. We hosted a joint masterclass with him. He is an amazing guy. I would definitely recommend him. I'm working with a functional medicine doctor. This is Jen, who is not super familiar with DNA, has a copy of hormones. I do not fit my characteristics. My doctor's taking DIM. So this is exactly where I say that hormones are highly complex and not as black and white as something like, do I metabolize fats, right? It's not that black and white. There's many considerations. Your genetic map is, here's who you are. Here's who you innately are, right? Now, let's look at your habits. What hormone disruptors do you have around you? What stress levels? What sleep quality? All of this stuff changes your hormones. And so that answer, although for the most part, it usually is pretty clear, but there's today more than ever hormone disruption that swings people in directions that are misaligned to their genomic map. And so you start to, and if you're saying Hashimoto's, adrenal fatigue, yeah, you're already in that bucket, right? Kim, just to answer your question, so just wait for a few minutes. Someone's going to drop a link in the chat, so you'll see it. You'll see it come in eventually. So that's what I would say about that. If you're experiencing Hashimoto's, adrenal fatigue, there's probably also a gut connection there. There's a hormone connection. It's probably not a single system that's leading to the problem either. It's not one single thing to fix. And this is why we call what we do functional genomics, not genetics. Genetics is, here's a gene, let's fix it. Functional is, let's look at this stuff in the context of how it actually happens in the human body, all these interconnected systems. So, and this is why we always say hormones is one of those places where coaching is really important, because it's so nuanced. Everybody's answer is different, right? It's very complex, right? Robin, my hormone profile is balanced. Both my teens are co-dominant with similar results. They're very different displayed. One curvy feminine. So this is what we talk about co-dominance, which is your habits will determine the outcome. So your daughters are wired in a certain way. You're now all of a sudden seeing that they look different. Pay attention to what they do, what they eat, how they treat their homework, how they think about reward. Look at their neurochemical maps and how they perceive the world. All of that stuff is going to decide which bucket they fall in. They're co-dominant, so they can lean in either direction. They can either experience both, which is very rare, or they're going to experience one because those are the habits they have at that time. If one of them is more athletic, they're going to experience that. If one of them is having a lot of anxiety, she's going to be more estrogenized and gain weight. So think about those kind of habits and how they may be driving the outcome. How can you support CYP1A1 if you are AA and have reduced metabolism of estrogen to 2-hydroxy? Is there a way to increase it? So yes, to increase 2-hydroxy metabolism is COMT. And COMT is done through SAMe and methylation support. So you want to work on speeding up COMT. That's how you clear 2-hydroxy estrogen. And there's a lot of things you could do there. SAMe is a good one. DIM can actually slow down the estrogen dominance. And we have a product called Female E, which will slow down the estrogen dominance. And that allows you to then not have as much fuel firing that toxicity. Okay, Jean. Sorry, we'll be dropping the link for Q&A session soon. I need to go to bed. That is the subscription. No, we need to drop that link soon. Tina needs to go to bed. And Tina, her bedtime is very important. Let's honor that. Avoid DIM in menopause, Naima. Yeah, you don't want to, when you're already low on hormones, you don't want to drop it even lower. Janice, you'll get a replay, so you'll be able to get what you missed. Okay, so Jean's question: how do I maintain the correct amount of testosterone in my body to maintain? Converts to testosterone. Converts to DHT. I feel weak. I know my testosterone is low. Can you help me understand a lot of food insensitivities? So to maintain more testosterone, there's, first of all, supplementation. Female E, again, is a good way to block estrogen conversion and give you more testosterone. The second way is to do things like heavy weightlifting and stretching. So your androgen receptors Often you may have free-flowing testosterone, but you're just not using it because you're not doing things with your body that cause it to be utilized. So your androgen receptors get activated by stretching. So if you were to do some yoga, that's why you'll see like people that do a lot of yoga are often quite lean, even though it's low intensity, because they're really activating their androgen receptors. And the more androgenized you are, the harder it is to put on fat. You get that nice, lean, clean looking muscle. So stretching and heavy weight training, resistance training, pushing heavy things, that's what gets you androgenized. Juan is asking, hormones get dysregulated by different factors as food, air, habits. Yes. Our psychology, emotions play a role. Yes. Brain tap. Yes. Amazing. Brain tap is a great solution if it's coming from your mind. If you feel like anxiety and other things are driving your hormone imbalances, because your thoughts will change your hormones. Agree with Juan for sure. Brain tap is an awesome solution. Barb, how does it work if one is in menopause but they're estrogen dominant? Well, there's two things there. The menopause itself may be a little rockier, so some of the symptoms, because there's a bigger delta value of where you're coming from and where you're going, but you also may land a little softer because you're not getting into deep low estrogen territory, right? Um, there's multiple different reasons why you would consider hormones, and this is one of them. If you're estrogen dominant and estrogen toxic, you may want to balance things out a little bit so that menopause is smoother. Or like some women that you talk to don't even get into menopause; they just keep it going. They have their cycle going, late into much, 60s, 70s even, because they just maintain their hormones. So that's what it is. It's maybe a bigger fluctuation, but a softer landing. Ruth is saying, where can we see this in our report? The hormone section in the hormone summary. So all the hormone genes we talked about are in the hormone summary. Okay, Marianne is asking, how do you know if fast version I have CYP3 AA? So yeah, for AA is the slow version. So you're doing good there. Marianne, for the CYP3A4, you're the slow version. GG is the fast version. How does codes ATGG? So it's different for each gene. That's why I went through each one. So I would say go through this recording, take your time with it. You're going to get a recording. You don't need to memorize all this stuff tonight. There's no exam happening later tonight. Take your time with the recording and go through it with your report side by side and analyze it. You'll get the recording and you'll understand how each gene is actually different. Do you want 3 red lights, whether or not you're, no, it's different depending on the area you're looking at. Oh, sorry, for the metabolites, yes. Slow across is the best way to be, whether you're a man or a woman. Can you clarify what results in AARCC eat? So diet nutrition we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Renee, I would suggest you watch a recording if you weren't there. We did dive deep into diet nutrition. Yes, there's some things to be said about hormones. If you're more estrogen dominant, you may retain fat a little easier, right? So you may want to consider how that structures your diet. But all in all, go look at the recording of the diet call. If you weren't on it, it was sent out to everybody. Sylvia saying, would you please summarize what the letter means with color? So that we just talked about, that it's not the same for each gene. So I can't tell you A means this and G means that. There's different locations. Each gene is thousands of letters long, and there's certain locations on different genes that we're looking for where there could be a spelling mistake. So it's not the same. So I would say we did this recording so you have the information. Open it up again, skip to that part, and have your report side by side, and you'll be able to answer your questions. Speed up your COMT. It's actually slipping my mind right now. There is, if you don't mind, Kristen, email me. I'm going to drop my email in here because we do know what does that, and for some reason it's slipping my mind right now. And there's more than one thing, by the way. We do this all the time also, so I can't believe I don't remember. So it just sometimes the brain doesn't work as well as it should. Sammy is one, yes, for sure, but there's other things also. We are in time stamp at 7:37. So someone that's asking for Wendy. So CYP 1981. comped. So, yeah, low estrogens. Oh, sorry, this is the 2-hydroxy. So CYP1A1 and AA comped. How does that affect? So you're good because the AA is the slow conversion into 2-hydroxy, which is what you want going into menopause. So you're doing good there. There's no real concern for Wendy. I don't have comped anywhere in my reports. Go to the inflammation and immunity section. It may not be in the hormone section. It's spoken of. It's also in your brain section. So it does, single genes do multiple things. So if you didn't see it in hormones, go to immunity and inflammation and go to brain. 9P, yeah. So now the reason why we talk about 9P21 and NOS3 and the cardiovascular genes in the hormone section is because specifically women do so poorly with cardiovascular disease when their hormones are dysregulated. So we put them right up next to each other to say, hey, if this is off, you now need to look at your cardiovascular health. So we did an entire call last week to dive into cardiovascular health. So I would recommend taking a look at that. So yeah, dive into that. 9P21 NOS3. We did do that last week to explain what those genes are, just so that we can focus on hormones today. But the reason we put them there is because cardiovascular disease is one of the major outcomes of poor hormonal health. So when your UGTB17 is a 2, that's good. You clear the the DHT well. And when you're, one second, I'm gonna open this, I lost what I was looking at. Your UGTB15 is a GG. I think that's the slower version, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just make sure. Yeah, decreased. So you're kind of in the middle. There's a combination of there's 2 people doing this job. One of them is called 217, one of them is called 21B. 217 is doing a really good job and 21B is doing a really bad job. So you're doing it somewhere in the middle. So you have like a medium clearance of DHT. It's a combination of the 2. Gene Morrow saying when the gene area needs help, does that mean it's a long-term assistance, or will we know when you can stop the supplement? So yeah, it is long-term, because remember, your baseline hormones are driven by your genes. So your MAP and your hormone metabolic pathway doesn't change unless you're purposely changing gene expression. So long as you're taking the right supplements or exercising the right way or stretching or doing these things we've been talking about, you will change the expression. As soon as you stop, you'll go back to the default that your genes are instructing your body to do. So this is permanent, and healthcare doesn't happen like sick care does, which is take this pill and make the thing go away, because the root cause that's firing it is still there. And that's the way we think. You only manage and maintain, you can't turn it off, right? Methylene blue is a great detoxer for Valerie. I mean, it works great on things like spike protein and other inflammatory insults. It doesn't very specifically deal with hormone toxicity, but it is a great potent detoxer that goes everywhere and finds inflammatory insults and gets rid of them. So likely supportive. Mary's asking, I think my hormones fell off a cliff fast and breast got saggy, but not over time. Can this be fixed? Yeah, hormones. I think if you were to take hormones, I would suggest, Mary, drop your email into the chat, or maybe somebody can connect with Mary Hennick. I think we saw your name come up earlier and Jason was going to be talking to you. Yeah, that you should be on hormones if that's what you're feeling like you want a true fix. Hormones will fix it. But we, again, will use your DNA to be very specific and know where to intervene. Debbie K, does the report online include the stoplight info? No, that's a clinical document. We cannot send that to you because there's clinical information that we're not allowed to regulatory wise. I just open it up for the purpose of you understanding to give you a visual, to take that data and apply it visually. You have the recording. You can go back to this recording as much as you want. You have it. Use it as a tool. but we cannot hand that report over to you because it has clinical information in it. Do hormones affect juvenile diabetes diagnosis? So what we're finding today is that there's more children with diabetic. I think there's something like 80,000 kids right now that are under 10 years old in the United States, which is almost 20x, like the historical number that are diabetic, and it's because of the oils and because of the sugars, obviously. It's not so much because of the hormones. It's really about what they're eating, and it's also the sedentary lifestyle. So sedentary lifestyle is not just about I'm not burning fat. It just changes the body. Like I said, you're more estrogenized. Your body will store fat because it's in rest mode. But really, the culprits are seed oils, omega-3, linoleic acid, and fast starches. That's really the main driver. Some supplements and herbs I seem to exacerbate the tinnitus I have. Yeah, for sure. There's some supplements that will cause inflammation, right? Sometimes the repair requires inflammation. Inflammation is actually a tool that your body uses. So CYP1B1 and 3A4 is fast, and detox is poor. So you, Natalie, need to focus on that. If you're 1B1 and 3A4 are fast, you have a double whammy toxic threat. That's a very serious place to be, and that's something that needs work. So Natalie, you are a person that has to focus on working with someone clinically, whether it's us or some functional medicine doctor, whoever. And it's not going to your, endocrinologist. It's not that. It's going to someone with functional medicine training who's going to deal with the root cause. What you're describing equals major problems. This is where they come from. But you're talking to us at a time where you don't have the problems yet. Let's make sure you never get them. Right? This is for you very specifically. You need support. This is not something you go on your own and try and work on. Do you tell, so Cindy, CYP1A2, Margaret is asking if someone can contact her regarding coaching. Maybe someone can direct message her. Do you test for CYP1A2? I can't find it in my reports. Yes, we do. We didn't put it into your reports. We do. If you send us a note, send a note to client care, we can tell you your result. We have the data, Cindy. We'll get you the data. We test for a lot more than what's in the reports. It populates some of our algorithm, but it's also just for research so that we can make more reports for you. So you'll come to us a year from now and you'll see new reports that weren't there before because we already had the genes. We're just building the science around it. So yeah, just email us and we'll give you your CYP1A2 result. Margaret, send an email to Jason, see below. Jason's email. Maria says, I have CYP 1A1AG. I was told coffee is bad for me. Would this only be when I'm in menopause? I'm still cycling. Actually, that gene that we just said is missing is more of what's implicit in caffeine metabolization, so CYP1A2. So Maria, again, if you want that, email client care and they can send you your results for CYP1A2. It's not in the report. But would this only be when I'm in menopause? No. Your caffeine metabolic pathway is from the time you're born, ongoing. So are the questions section? Yes, they're. Sorry, I think Susan, you're asking, are the questions section the recorder? So these Q&A, this is part of the recording, if that's what you meant. So yes, and Maria, request the CYP1A2. That's what you need to know, and it's from birth. It doesn't change. Where do you find the habits? Habits you have to decide yourself. And this is why people work with coaches. Coaches know what to do. So the question of doing it yourself is either a question of budget. I don't want to pay for a coach, or question of like know-how. I don't need a coach. I've done this before. So that's where you can go design your own habits around how do you implement, what problem am I trying to solve, and then how do I solve it? Yes, behavioral change specialists know how to do this stuff. That's why we have them on our team. So, that's where we can do this for you, or you can do it on your own, but there's no list of them because we don't know what problem you're trying to solve. Do our reports take into account our gender? No, we give you the data, you apply it to your context. Fibroids, acne, male hair loss. That's speaking to androgen dominance and DHT. If you're look at your report, you're probably going to see a dominance leaning towards DHT. And I would recommend Male A. It's a product we have called Male A to block that conversion. And potentially some detox support, which again, whenever it comes to hormones, we recommend going through a coach. Andrew, if I take vitamin D with my enlarged prostate, it will get worse, more difficult to urinate. When I stop, it goes away. So vitamin D is a hormone. And I believe it's been rebranded a vitamin because of how impactful it is. Likely, so take a look at your DHT pathway to see if it is fast. Wendy, we were saying that CYP1A2 is not in your reports. We have data. We have a lot more data than what we give you, right? Because we don't have reports built for them yet. We will continue to build more reports. You have to email and ask for that if you want it, Wendy. So Andrew, vitamin D is a hormone and will up and down regulate other hormones. So if you're finding that your prostate enlargement gets worse, you're probably right. So vitamin D is a potent upregulator. Maybe you're a very efficient metabolizer of vitamin D. Take a look at your profile. Maybe you just need to take less, right? You have to consider your environment and how much sunlight you're getting, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a context-based thing, but you could be right onto something. Vitamin D, 10% of all your biological function gets up and down regulated by how much vitamin D you have, including hormones. So it definitely has an effect on hormones. So either try taking less or look at your gene report to see if maybe you metabolize vitamin D a little too efficiently and you maybe don't even need any or just very little. And also speed up that DHT clearance. Olga is saying, what is Androx? These are cardiovascular genes. So last week we talked about that. Olga, I would suggest going back to last week's recordings. The reason why we put them in the hormone section is because women have a hard time with cardiovascular disease when they have a hormone imbalance. So we just put it there just for convenience. But the information we talked about last week, so watch last week's recording. Toxicity, it's just worst case scenario. Sometimes often the genes are expressing. So what we're saying, it's not a question of expressing. We're saying that if you have a fast CYP1A1 pathway and you make 4-hydroxyestrogen, it's not a question of expression. You're doing it, right? Unless you happen to be very lucky and you're eating the right thing, etc., you're doing it. So we say toxicity because a toxin is something that causes inflammation and makes you sick, and this stuff does. So it's defined as a toxin. A toxin is something that damages your cells and ages you and damages your DNA and unravels the cell. So yes, they are toxins. It seems odd to think about something that your body makes as a toxin, but you do. And there's a certain level of inflammation that you need. And so your body can make inflammation. So they are definitely toxins. Coach and a clinician. Well, clinicians do coach, right? So a clinician means somebody who's call it diagnosing and treating. A coach only is working on behavior. They're not diagnosing, they're not recommending products. They're only working on how do we take this problem and get you to actually be the better version of yourself. It's a very unique and powerful skill that most people don't realize how useful it is until they actually go through it. You know, that account, and you don't get this in the medical experience. So you're not used to it. You're not used to someone being there all the time and helping you through the journey. It's like, I'll see you in 6 months, right? No, it's like, text me and I will answer you and we will fix whatever, whenever you get stuck. That's coaching. Fix leaky gut for Andrew. I just did that with a product from BioOptimizers called Biome something. So if you go to BioOptimizers website, they have one product that has the word biome, B-I-O-M-E in it, biome something, biome breakthrough. Thank you, Mary. Works really, really well. Do it on an empty stomach in the morning. It's going to take a few months. Also add some enzymes to remove the load. And you're going to find that you're going to, it'll likely repair your gut in 3 to 4 months. Sorry, I saw something else here. Sign up for the coaching because in the email after the 2 weeks, there was 3 different choices. Yeah, so Graziella signed up for the subscription, which is different from coaching. Subscription is just access to a coach whenever you need. It's not clinical, it's not diving into your DNA, but it's support. It's just ongoing support, which is all some people need, right? Geneva is saying, will you explain the concern with taking estradiol in specific genes? So if you are fast CYP1A1, you make a lot of 4-hydroxyestrogen. Well, estradiol fuels the 4-hydroxy pathway, right? So if you are fueling the 4-hydroxy pathway, then you're going to have more of that toxic estrogen. So for some women, we recommend they should not be taking estradiol or in very small numbers while monitoring very aggressively. So regular Dutch testing and review of estrogen metabolites. Wendy said she's curious about if they're co-dominant women who have always have good, healthy levels of hormones without issues, we have a more difficult menopause when those hormones are lost. And yeah, so it's kind of like anything where the bigger the delta value for change, the more you're going to feel it, right? So same thing with your brain chemicals. We talked about on the very first call, people that have very high dopamine expression also suffer the worst anxiety, because for them to feel the bottom is a much farther place to go. Same thing with hormones. If you're used to having everything firing well because you have a good supply and it's all removed, there's a bigger drop. So therefore, yes, BHRT is going to really create a smoother ride, and we can support you with that. Just contact Jason or anyone here and we'll get you set up with hormones. Yes, nail growth, all of that stuff, Maria. It's going to help with nails. She's asking about hormones. It'll help with nails, it'll help with hair, it'll help with skin, it'll help with bone, everything. Is this a hormone issue can be treated with understanding your DNA? So for anything clinical in nature, give me a moment. I'm going to take a look on our database. Need form, Shelly. We're getting in the form. So curcumin can do a fine job for BDNF. I wasn't familiar with that. I know curcumin does support inflammation and it supports a lot of pathways. I didn't know it supported BDNF. That's a great thing to know. Anyone that's BDNF suboptimal, curcumin, seems to support it. I have not heard that, but if it does, it's a great place to be because it also supports inflammation. By the way, I'll just let everyone know that if you click right now on this link, I'm also going to click on it myself. The one that was just dropped in the chat, it says Coffee with Cash. This is the what we're dropping this week. We're also going to be offering you other options, a survey, which will be dropped soon because we want to know what you want from us, right? So the particular one that's available is here, but we also came up with a couple of other options, and we're going to ask you to tell us what you prefer. And that's here. So Beth just dropped that in. If you see the drop form, in fact, everybody right now, let's just take a minute. If you go to the jot form that was just dropped, it asks you questions about the program. And if you think that there's more that you would need, let us know. And we will support you there. And this is just based on what you asked for, right? So this isn't anything from our end, it's not my role to be sitting on calls like this. So again, this is more of a question for you. What do you want? This is why we set up the jot form, for you to tell us what you want. What do you need from us? What would you like to see? Because we think we know, but maybe we're wrong, right? So we thought that this would be useful based on all your feedback. That's why it took us some time to get started, but we did, and everyone's like, wow, this is what we needed. Thank you, thank you. So now when it comes to more in-depth, how do I get more time? How do I work with this guy, the guy with no hair? How do I get more clinical time? How do I get hormones? Like, what are those questions? What do you want and need? How do we better support you? That's the purpose of that form. So before you go subscribe or do anything, let us know, because there may be something else that you want that we didn't think of, right? And that's the best way for you to get support. So tell us, and we'll work on it. If we see a consistent theme, we will do that. Yeah, for sure, Janice, fill it out whenever. Keep the link, save it, and just let us know. Or if you have thoughts right now, go ahead. Okay, let's go back to the questions. Sorry, I'm going to just check something here in our database. I think when it comes to, so anything that's a condition that has a label, there's some forms of that condition, and I'm speaking to the lipodemia. This is like this buildup of fat, right? There's some that are innate. There's some that are stuck, and there's some that are caused. And a genetic condition, which you would likely know you have, is hard to deal with. But I can tell you that there's a section in the report that speaks to cellulite, because we know that estrogen dominance leads to the buildup of fat for women, particularly in the lower half, right? And for men, it leads to gynecomastia, man boobs, and a bigger tire, right? Broader shoulders even. So yes, there's certainly something to be said about unusual fat storage and estrogen dominance. In fact, we've seen just from something as simple as taking female E that this weight issue can be unraveled for some people, because it's so much of it is just driven by hormones. John, would you consider a report that shows all the genes tested, what it is for me to make? Yes, so we're actually doing that right now. So our tech team has met, and we've agreed that we're going to create a summary that shows you all the genes and what they mean for a quick lookup. We're doing that now. Barbara saying, is a link going to be in the chat? It's in the chat now. Sorry, this is where you asked your question a while ago. Do you have to make an appointment with a doctor in DNA instead of coach to get hormone recs? Yes, you do have to speak to a doctor. We do have a couple of doctors on staff that very specifically deal with the hormones, Dr. Stephanie, and there's a couple others. So again, drop an email and we will focus on, we'll get you set up with hormones, but it does require a doctor when we do have that on our end. And to answer your question, Tonya, the purpose of a paid session is to reduce the number of people, because you can see what's happening here, right? We have hundreds of people here, and I'm trying my best to answer within the time we have allotted. I'm going as deep, but still deep as I can while maintaining surface level to not miss anybody. So the only intention behind this is some people are saying to us, I want more time with that guy, right? And I can't do that. I'm out running the company and doing other things. We have clinicians that do that. So we figured here's a way to reduce the number of people, but still make it possible for me to cancel something else and make this happen. And that's the purpose of that. So GSTP1G gene, how do I maintain? There's two things. You don't do well with airborne toxins, avoid them. So you have to avoid them, you have to get them out, but you also can support with precursors for glutathione like NAC, selenium, milk thistle, ALA. We make a product called Detox Optimizer. It's on the website. This is exactly what someone like you needs. Wendy, what if you have some reaction to progesterone but not to estrogen, a gene issue? My testosterone is very low. That's a question for the clinician. I can't answer that question. We could use your DNA to answer that question. There may be some things that stand out, but that's a question I would ask to speak to Dr. Stephanie on our team. That's a better question for her. Liz says we have a daughter who'll be 20 in August. She has debilitating periods, nothing helps her. This is exactly who needs what we do. We can use her genetics to figure out her hormone map, and then exactly what needs to be changed and fixed, right? So for Liz, we have, so we will examine her DNA. We would use the map as we just saw. You can either take this recording and give it to her to self-serve and figure things out, or book some coaching time for a coach to dive into and analyze her DNA and figure out exactly what's going on, exactly what the threats are that she maybe didn't realize. Something like, for example, birth control pill, or maybe there's some chemical in her environment, or some food that she isn't understanding. So this is where this is exactly the type of person that we are able to help, and usually fairly quickly. But again, for the self-serve answer, here's your DNA report, here's tonight's recording, use this information overlaid on your data to start to figure out the estrogen toxicity, the lack of clearance, the estrogen dominance. You'll be able to see where things are going wrong. Lynn is saying UGT is clears androgen slow rate may lead to increased androgen levels. So you clear it at a slow rate, which means they stay there for longer, so they're increased, right? And then you remember there's two genes, so there's two genes doing this job. So you need to look at the two and then combine them to get a net result. But we separate them so you can see where things are breaking down, because there may be a supplement that works on that gene but doesn't work on that gene. So when it comes to the therapeutic side, this is why we split it up. Cheryl saying, what genes affect human growth hormone? We don't look at that, but we certainly understand that fasting supports that, mitochondrial work supports that, high weight resistance training boosts your testosterone, androgenizes you, and promotes human growth hormone. So those are a few areas you can focus on if you want more. Fasting, hormetic stress, as we call it, healthy stressors drive human growth hormone. My genes convert to DHT, so what may be causing my eyebrows thinning? Eyebrows thinning is likely an inflammatory issue. So again, when we look at inflammation as a root cause of everything, for the most part, right? 95%, let's say, maybe even 98. Now, what's going to fail first is based on how you're designed. Some people are designed with bad eyebrow follicles. Some people are designed with bad breast tissue and they're going to get breast cancer. So what's going to fail first is a bit of a Russian roulette. But what's going to trigger it is always the same. It's inflammation. So that's just a sign that you're not healthy inside. The cells are not healthy. That's where I would go dive into your DNA report to figure out why you're not healthy inside. Is it a glutathione problem, methylation problem, antioxidative problem, estrogen toxicity problem? What's driving that inflammation? It may be insulin, maybe food. You can identify it through the genes. Your thoughts on carnivore? I'm listening to podcasts. So I think that anybody can use a carnivore diet as a therapeutic tool. It is a very powerful therapeutic tool. 8 weeks, you're going to feel amazing. I think you need to look at your ApoA2 gene to determine whether you can continue doing it. If you're not a good fat metabolizer, you cycle on and off. It's not a long-term permanent solution. So if you are a good fat metabolizer and your insulin response is good, which are both in the diet report, then go ahead, keep doing it. You'll do well. It may be a load on the kidneys. It's a lot of protein to go through, right? But you can cycle on and off if you're not doing well with fat or insulin. Mary said, hormones that show up in the blood. Yeah, so the hormones that show up in the blood are where you're at today, and the genes will explain why. It's a combination of your genes and your habits. So if your estrogens are low, but your estrogen metabolic pathway genetically is not low, what's not adding up there? Maybe there's something you're eating or something you're doing in your exercise that's causing the gene expression to change, right? So this is where, yeah, this is where we would say, oh, I lost your question. I was worried. But sorry, I lost your question. I was just trying to check if I missed something. I think I closed it too soon. But yeah, that's where we would say that, you know, if it's low and they don't add up, there's a habit in between that's causing the variability. Autonomia, I'm going to check. Give me a second, Sharon. Cindy, best type of exercise for androgen dominant estrogen toxicity. Okay, if you're androgen dominant, heavy weight training, you also go look at your SOD2 antioxidative gene to understand how well you can handle cardiovascular activity and oxidative stress. If you're not doing well or you slow down the cardiovascular activity, right? But if you're androgen dominant, you're going to do well with resistance and weight training. That's what your body is designed for. And not big heavy weights, more like 8 to 12 reps of medium. Estrogen is what drives the mass, the ability to lift very heavy, right? And just so everyone knows, I'm at the questions now from 8:26. It looks like there's 35 left. So Mary, Jason, I think maybe he wanted to answer the one about breast, if he felt it was embarrassing. Oh, I think this was meant for Jason. Sorry. Geneva. CYP1AA. So Geneva, your CYP1A1AA means that you're slow for 4-hydroxy, which is good news. You're okay. I would also look at your estrogen dominance to make sure there isn't too much estrogen. Amy will definitely look into coaching, but what are some hanging fruit to help a woman support CYP3A4AA is not bad. And CYP1B1 yeah, so I would focus on COMT and antioxidation and glutathione, those three big ones. So going back to last week's recording about the inflammatory and immunity section, COMT activity, detox activity, antioxidant activity. That's how you deal with that. And if the estrogen is also dominant, you slow the estrogen down. Brenda's postmenopausal, co-dominant. I'm very active, gained weight initially and have a after having a detox, a better weight. Fast. So 1. So you are more androgenized. So when you went into menopause, hormones drop, and so that androgen you used to rely on maybe wasn't there as much. So I would recommend that you do a lot of stretching and heavy weight training. Use those big muscles, get yourself more androgenized. Stretching prior to and after will allow you to activate the androgen receptors and bind those androgens. So this is for Brenda. That may be a thing to do. It's maybe not a diet issue, it's probably a hormone issue. So that's what I would suggest. Geneve says, oops, about JV. Oh, and Geneva, yeah, on top of that, your glutathione pathway is not good. So I would focus on precursors like detox optimizer or NAC glycine. Tiffany saying, can your DIM supplements replace a horrible drug, tamoxifen? Yeah, so tamoxifen, yeah, we can, that's another, rather than just giving you a straight yes, I would say we've done it, but this requires clinical intervention. We're talking about a drug here, and we're talking about breast cancer. So the answer is there is a path in the sort of theme of what you're saying, but I would not just say go do something, because the nature, the sensitivity level of what you're dealing with, I would work with somebody on the coaching side, at least dive in a little deeper. But the shorter answer is yes, but don't do it on your own. This requires careful management of a lot of details. GT means in the middle, so you're one fast, one slow. Shelly, to answer your question, your GT 2B17. GT, you're kind of doing it fast, and you're in the medium. How does a drug, Joanne, how does a drug like DES influence gene expression? Joanne, I'm not familiar with DES. Keep in mind, I'm not a clinician. So, and I'm a anti-drug dealer. So we don't use a lot of drugs in our practice. We can help people manage them. On the clinician side, I personally am not that versed. So if you don't mind, maybe in the chat, you can just provide a little bit more detail about that, and then I can answer your question. Just put it into the chat, because I won't see your questions until much later. I'm still only partway through. What's the problem? What is DES? What is it for? How does complete hysterectomy affect this? Well, a lot. you essentially bypassed everything and there's no hormones, so there's no menopause, there's no anything, but hormones are low, which means not enough estrogens. You need estrogens to have good cardiovascular health, good brain health. So you should potentially consider hormones, Renee. So if you've been through a hysterectomy, it's like all of these key ingredients you don't have anymore, or at least at very low levels. You still have your adrenals, which make so anyways, all I would say is that you should really very seriously consider getting on hormone treatment. It's going to make a world of difference for you. And the more you age, the more impactful it's going to be. DES prevented miscarriage. I'm not equipped to answer that here, but I can look it up and figure it out. So Joanne, I would recommend maybe emailing me. So yeah, send me an email. This is for Joanne. Dr. Lindsay Vernon, Hormone Pro. Oh, so Wendy's recommended somebody that understands DES. So maybe you also take a look there. Brent is asking, could you offer a discount for a couple? I would talk to Jason if Jason's on here. Jason, drop your email in there. Brent has a question. I'm not authorized to give discounts. My hands are tied. Jason's allowed to do what he wants. Joanne, sorry, Irene, I don't have CYP 1A1, CYP 18E1 in my home report. They're in the hormone summary. So if we go to the hormone summary, they're kind of halfway down the summary. That's where you'll see them. Spider veins. So we have actually worked on this. So this is a place where I again can't give you an answer here, but I can tell you that we have worked on this in our clinic, and it requires us talking to our clinicians. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that we have worked on this and there is an answer. I just don't know what it is. So yeah, we can definitely support. I just don't know what to tell you the answer is, but there is an answer. So send an email. We'll work on that. Vascular inflammation. Well, removal of all toxicity, Diane, avoiding of toxins, and supporting. If you have a 6G9P21, you should be buying a product called Arterisol. We actually have it on our website. It's not our product. It's the only supplement on our product that we don't, supplement on our website that we don't make, because we believe in it so much. It very specifically builds the glycocalyx, the inner blood vessel. There it is, Arterisol. Someone typed in there. Go buy that and use that, and it will change your life. You need that. That's the one thing that will help. And then high grade omega-3. You should have a high grade omega-3. Marta is 4-hydroxy. Yes, your 4-hydroxy estrogen is somewhat aggressive, which is one of the toxic versions for Marta. So that's another area where you would highly be recommended to get into coaching, to look at everything else and what part's going to break first. Where's the failure going to happen? Janice, I just saw this other question pop up about my LDL went up with omega-3. We don't think about cholesterol the way that clinicians think about it symptomatically. We look at the ApoE gene, and some people just have a higher resting cholesterol number because of the way their ApoE gene functions. Some people are suffering from inflammation, or their diet is so starch rich that it doesn't allow them to metabolize fats and cholesterol probably. So again, it's a multi-pronged answer. It's not just this equal that. There's something else in between that caused that outcome. Taking omega-3 should not make your cholesterol numbers go up. There's something else in between there, and we can potentially figure that out. So somebody's asking about Wendy, sorry, is asking about reflux. So the top of your gut, there's a sphincter, like literally a muscle that closes the esophagus so that your your stomach acid doesn't go up into your throat, right? Into your esophagus. So what happens is if your pH balance isn't optimal in your gut, the way that this muscle closes, the signal is the acid from your gut hitting it, which then causes it to close. And what we do is we think, oh, I have a gut acid issue. I'm going to take a pill to reduce my gut acid, which makes it even less in contact with the acid, which means the muscle atrophies even worse. What you actually need to do is the opposite. You need to purge, and it's painful, it's not easy, but if you take a licorice, a black licorice that coats your esophagus to help you with that, and then you purge the acid to train this muscle just like any other bicep, tricep, whatever, to close properly, and you actually fix the problem. You fix the muscle that was atrophied. And that's how you do it. I would work with a naturopath. They're really good at this. They can give you the licorice, they can give you the supplements that help you purge the acid and cause the acidity level to actually go up, so that you have more acid training this muscle. That's how you solve that. Melasma, for the people that we've improved and reversed it with, usually has to do with insulin response. So I would check your report, TCF7L2, and see if your insulin response is off. Then it's a diet thing. You have to eliminate all starches, all sugars, get your insulin balanced, potentially wear a continuous glucose monitor to see how things are going. That's how we've been able to deal with it. There's probably other ways that are more direct, the melasma itself, but we've learned that insulin response is a major contributor. Andrew, CC is the good mitochondria. So you're doing, oh, sorry, CC, sorry, you're talking about, I thought mitochondria. This is the DHT. So for CC, oh, I've lost my, sorry, my computer's starting to run a little slow. Oh, you know what? I realized I need to plug it in. That is why it is running slow. That's how you can tell that we're having an amazing night when the battery is drained. One sec. So to answer your question about, oh, I'm sorry, it's going to take a minute for my laptop to come back to life. It's moving very slow. It was about to die, in fact. Okay, so SRD. Maybe while we're waiting for this, I'll go back to another question because that'll take a second. But I love my caffeine, no adversity. What is it doing to me then? You just the effect of caffeine, Jill. The effect of caffeine. It's not that you have CYP1A2. It's what version of the gene. So there's a slow, medium, fast. If you have the fast version, you metabolize caffeine really well, right? If you have the slow version, you plow through it a lot slower, which means that the effect lasts longer, right? That's what we're saying. And either way, you may love it for either one of those reasons, but you wouldn't want to be drinking it at like 6 p.m. because it might not allow you to sleep if you had the slow version. Oh, sorry. Can I request a coach that has a lot of experience in estrogen? Yeah. I would say that on our side, so if you're going to be working on hormones, okay, I'm not going to interject and promise something that maybe once we get to the clinical side, they're going to see something different that I didn't see. So the short answer is yes, right? And the long answer is there's a couple people that I can think of right away that are the right people for that. So yes, there's people that specialize in hormones on our end. Patricia, can you suggest how to lower ApoE value of the diet nutrition podcast? Waiting for this hormone, but never heard about cardiovascular. Yeah, go look at the cardiovascular one. That it's because it wasn't just about cardiovascular disease. It was about why chronic diseases start, and it's the answer to everything. It's how do you maintain a healthy cell so that the terrain doesn't allow for chronic disease. And that's where you lower all values. Everything becomes homeostatic and balanced in what it's supposed to be. So I would suggest take a look at that. You missed a really important one. Tim, Any suggestions on a transition off of birth control? Oh, wow. So, so the transition off, you may want to book a session with one of our hormone specialists, because there's more concerns there than just your initial concern of how do I get off birth control. If we see a red flag for hormone toxicity or something else going on, this is like a call for service. Like we need to dive deep. So Kim, if you've been on birth control for a long, long time, like you have, there's work to be done there, especially if you're estrogen dominant, especially if you're estrogen toxic, especially if your detox pathways are off. Don't just take it as, okay, I'm getting off. There's potentially more work. I would highly recommend you work with somebody, whether it's us or some functional medicine doctor, that can test for other things that you might not even be aware of now. Vitamin D is suboptimal. Taking high dose of D3 monitoring my blood. Currently it's at max. Yeah, so you also don't bind. So what I would suggest, Osaid, is take a split dose. So take whatever you're taking and split it into 2 or 3 doses, right? And also the Canadian scale max is nonsense. So first of all, forget about what Health Canada is saying. The reality is very different, especially if you're in Canada with a winter, and right now a fire, apparently, if anyone's been watching the news and there's no sun. So there, yeah, I would say split the dose because you don't bind efficiently, right? 2, 3 doses of the same total, just split it up. Don't go into the afternoon because you're going to affect your sleep. It's a daytime supplement. PCOS typically is driven, Gene, by DHT, androgen toxicity. So those cysts that develop are typically rooted in DHT. So look at that and see if you're making too much of it. If that's the case, there you go. We need to work on that. If you're not, then there's something else, which again requires deeper investigation. There's something else going on in your habits that are misaligned to your genome, but there's no straightforward answer to that. The straightforward answer is DHT. Just take a look there. The not so straightforward answer is if it's not DHT, this requires work. I have osteoarthritis. Dare you to digitally kiss him. I don't know if that was about me. David's being naughty. And sorry, I saw this question about osteoarthritis and osteopenia. It's not so this misnomer of diabetes runs in my family, breast cancer runs in my family. No, there's some cellular or some biological failure that runs in your family that if you don't deal with equals that problem eventually. Arthritis and osteopenia doesn't run in your family. It's probably poor vitamin D metabolism. It's probably poor estrogen levels. There's something that drives it. It doesn't just happen. It's not like one day your body just says, okay, osteopenia has to kick in now. It's very complex to lose bone mass. You know, it's not just a switch that gets turned on. So that's what the symptom is what gets masked, but there's something else going on, typically vitamin D or estrogen related. So take a look at those pathways. Osaid, I already answered your question about that. Can I safely take detail? No. So Sharon, I would not just jump into VHRT with your profile. We would have to very carefully manage what you're doing. You would have to see, again, I would recommend on our side, maybe Dr. Stephanie. She's been doing this for a long time. Try and book time there and do not take VHRT. First of all, VHRT is great, right? Makes you feel amazing. Do not do it without somebody using your DNA to prescribe it at a personalized level. You could very easily hurt yourself. Barb, you joked about your hair several times. Andrew, that may be possible to solve the hair loss. Okay, so I vaguely remember that way back you said, yeah, and I've done this. I have slowed down my hair loss because I blocked my DHT conversion. So I used to be more ripped, let's say. So it's a trade-off. So I had the ability to see my six pack. Now it's kind of like there's a shadow of a line here and there, right? So there's a trade-off. So yeah, for sure, Barb, you can predict this early and do the right things to prevent it, right? I've stopped. I had a receding hairline, which I've stopped. And anybody can do the same if it's DHT related. There's many reasons for hair loss, by the way. There's stress, there's inflammation, there's toxins, there's so many things. The same things that drive everything else also drive hair loss, but the foundational hardware failure is DHT. So Tracy, do your doctors look at results from a Dutch test and hormones? Yeah, we can interpret Dutch if you're paired with the right person. Dutch is a measure in time. Where are you at today? DNA is why are you there? And then the two of those combined is an amazing set of data. Nina, can you explain the difference between coaches? We did that. So coaches only work on behavior change. They don't dive into the DNA. They're just trying to help you with the what do I do now part. How do I actually do this and make sure it happens? Does the DNA company have a 5-HTP supplement? Yes, we have something called Deep Calm. So it's not just 5-HTP, it's doing a few other things. So the way we design these cocktails are around understanding gene expression. And sometimes it's not a singular thing that needs to be solved. There's multiple things. So we have a product called Deep Calm that does that. You can even take our sleep optimizer during the day, by the way, right? So yeah, so you can use sleep optimizer during the day as a 5-HTP and serotonin regulator. One of our co-founders does that. It doesn't actually put you to sleep. It gets you into a different wave state where if you are asleep, you have a deeper sleep, but it doesn't knock you out. The coffee call is 1 hour, but this is exactly what I'm saying. Go fill out the form and tell us what you want. You might say, rather than having access to a call every month, I want to have a 8-hour day, right? And I want only 5 other people to be in the room. Okay, then we'll figure out how that works. So for Anonymous, he said, how long are the coffee calls? What we design is around basically the feedback we got from people, which is, hey, we have 1 hour to spend. How do we do this? How do we get more time with less people? So we figured something out, right? If you have a different idea on what it should look like, tell us in the job form. We want to make what you want so that it serves your purpose. As CYP1A2, can I call to get sulfation SNPs since those affect hormone clearance? Yeah, you can get that. So call, email, we'll get you data, CYP1A2, we can get that for you. B12, yes. So Nina's asking about B12. If you go to the immunity and inflammation report, which we talked about last week, there's several genes that talk about B12. The link you sent doesn't show if we get 2 calls a month or 12 emails a month. So the subscription service is a subscription. It's in fact, even if you go to our website, you can see the subscriptions. There's multiple levels. So go to the DNAcompany.com and go to the marketplace subscriptions, and you'll see there's actually 3 different subscription products with different tiers of interaction. So Brenda, same answer. Not that you should stay away, but let's personalize it. Let's make sure you're getting what you actually need that's not going to hurt you, right? There's amazing benefits to HRT if you do it right. So the real answer is let's work with a clinician who knows what they're doing to give you what actually is good for you, not a general, here's your HRT. Tiffany, are you saying that you're, yes, we can. So Tiffany, yes, we can put you on HRT. So if you want us to work on that for you, we can do it. We have an amazing team. Some people have been doing it for decades, truly. So yes, we can do that for you. Valerie, when you told the other question about hysterectomy, they were told, so yeah, hysterectomy means that everything we're saying about hormones means less, right? And that's why I'm saying that adding hormones is more beneficial. In terms of the estrogen toxicity, yeah, those genes are still in your cells. So if you add estrogen and your genes are instructing estrogen toxicity, well, that's still going to happen because the genes haven't changed. And this is why hormone disruption is so important, the plastics, the chemicals, etc. When you add hormone disruptors in your body treats them as estrogen and just makes more toxic estrogens, even though they're not even estrogen. So that is what your body does. The genes, the instructions are still there. So as soon as estrogen is added, it does what it's going to do based on the coding in your DNA. Diane's asking, I would also like to know about spider and varicose veins. We're going to get that answer for everybody. I do know we have that answer. The same co-founder that I was talking about earlier, I remember him working on that, and we have an answer. I just don't know what it is. No copies of GSTM1 means that you do not do a good job of detoxifying at the gut, and you have to be very careful about what you're eating. It's going to cause you inflammation and gut dysbiosis if you're not. High DHT compared to EPA better for brain health, or should EPA always be higher? That is a Stephanie question. That is a clinician question. I can tell you why these things happen. To tell you a clinical answer of which is better, if you just want the simple answer, send a message to client care and we'll get you a clinician answer. I'm not a clinician, so I literally am not allowed to answer that question. But if you want someone to manage it for you, we can send that question to client care by email. So Irene says vitamin D levels are good. It's high. My DNA says it's good, but it doesn't bind to receptors. Is there? So that's exactly makes sense. You got a vitamin D test, and it says it's high. Why? Because you don't bind it properly. So when you take vitamin D, it's going to be free flowing in your blood and then stored in fat as opposed to being utilized. So you need to split the dose. That's your challenge. More frequent and less at a time. Jen, I missed your response to lipidemia. Yes, estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance plays a major role. Slowing down estrogen dominance can make fat melt away. Mary, have you heard of a company called Live Conscious? No. We make an omega-3 that's a really high quality, good ratio. Nutri-C, Nordic Naturals, I think it's called. The Norwegian stuff I find is really good. Quality wise, it doesn't have that rancid, fishy burp either. They're very good at doing things fresh. So that's the stuff we use also. I'm not familiar with Life Conscious. Can you take too much antioxidants? Well, again, there's some level of inflammation that's healthy, right? So if you go to the gym and tear your muscle so that it grows, but you are artificially adding in recovery protocol, then maybe you're not going to get muscle growth. Same thing, if you have a cut that needs to be repaired, but if you can't experience inflammation, your body doesn't do the job. So there's some level of inflammation that you need, especially acute in response to problems, right? So yeah, there's a such thing as taking too much. And you want to have, it's about, here's your bucket of what your body can handle, and let's keep it down to like a lesser degree. It's not about emptying it completely. You're going to be exposed to stuff, right? You also want your body to be stressed, so it's constantly fighting back. We're just overstressed. We have too much in the bucket. That's where we're at today. Viome, Mary, is a gut microbiome test. I personally haven't used it, but I know many people that have. I get mixed reviews in the context of, I don't know how complete their data is. So if I tell you something about a gene, I'm saying it with certainty, and I'm not going to change what I say about it tomorrow. They are still learning, right? So they have this crazy AI algorithm that they're building, and they're working on trying to perfect that. So I think it says right on their website, the race to 2 million, like they need 2 million customers to even get the right data for the AI to be fed properly. So that's all I would say. It's a little bit premature. You might get some useful stuff in there. You might get some stuff that you go back 6 months and it told you chickpeas, and then 6 months later it says don't eat chickpeas, right? So I would get it if you want to support driving research like this forward, so that they do eventually have that 2 million number mark. I'd be one of the pioneers, but I wouldn't rely on it like clinically. I would not recommend any birth control or copper IUDs, etc. In today's day and age, there's so much hormone disruption, right? There's so many chemicals, past plastics, etc. You don't need more. There's already too much. So no, I would never recommend. Steph, advice for those exposed to toxic smoke from Canada. Yeah, big problem. So we don't really even know what's going on. What we've learned in the last 3 years is it's kind of like Orwellian, what's the truth even anymore, right? So I'm waiting. the news now comes out in 6 months and no longer comes out at the time the thing happened. In 6 months, we find out what really happened. So I would just say protect yourself, detox, filter, all that stuff, because we don't really know what's going on right now. It's weird. I'm in Toronto and I'm seeing pictures on social media in New York of like you can't even see the bridges and the rivers and the buildings, but I don't see a problem in Toronto. A couple days ago, the sun looked like it was kind of like amber, but it doesn't look anything like the pictures I'm seeing online. So arm yourself with detox optimizer, glycine, NAC, support the liver, and let's see what's really going on when we find out. So infrared supports mitochondria, not so much vitamin D, although all these things are interconnected. Sunlight and vitamin D support vitamin D, right? Tanning bed, UV light. I've never looked into that, but I don't think it's going to provide you the health benefit of infrared or vitamin D, right? It's meant to burn your skin and give you a tan. Corey, osteoporosis. It's not a singular product, it's hormones and vitamin D. So that's an area where we would dive deep into the DNA to say, are you more estrogen? Are you lacking estrogen? Sorry. Is your clearance too fast? Like, what's the exact thing? There are answers, but I can't tell you what the answer is without looking at your DNA. But I can tell you there is an answer. There certainly is an answer. That's another area where coaching is important. Even if it's just a single interaction, just to understand better. Is it estrogen? Is it a vitamin D problem? But if you want to self-serve it, go to your report and look at your vitamin D. Is that a problem? And you need to do that properly. Go look at your estrogen pathway. Do you not make enough? Do you clear it too fast? What's going on there? Those are the two first places I would go. Kristen, graying hair, mitochondrial support, copper. That's another big one. We are depleted of our mineral supply. We don't even have copper pipes anymore. We have PVC plastic. So add minerals to your water, specifically copper, and support your mitochondria to stop the graying hair. A blood test for hormones. A Dutch test is just kind of the gold standard. So as long as it's giving you all the data on your different forms of estrogen, estradiol, estrone, estriol, the estrogen metabolites 4-16 and 2-hydroxy. If you're getting all that data, it doesn't matter what test you take. People just use the Dutch test in practice. It's the most commonly used in functional medicine. Gray hair is in, yeah, for sure. Debbie's saying to just rock it and own it. I have an excess 3x of B12. I do not supplement. Any thoughts? Oh, you're in excess of 3 times. I think that's what you're saying, Marta. So your blood test is showing that you're 3 times in excess of B12. Then it's diet related. It may be genetic that you're super optimizer. Super metabolizer. I would look at the FUT2 gene, MTR, MTRR. If you're doing really well on all those, then you just metabolize it really well, and you got to be careful what you're eating. Those are my only thoughts. We very rarely hear that. Almost everybody does not have enough B12. Maybe you need to sell your DNA. You can bottle it and sell it. Kristen, I want a game plan moving forward to optimize my hormone health. Yeah, so that's Kristen, you are the exact person. I want a game plan to optimize my hormone health, and that might mean hormone therapy. You are the person that needs to get into a coaching program, right? So you are the person that contact Jason. He's there. They are I would say get in there and do that. So you are the exact person who should be working with coaching. And the difference between coaching and practitioner is just who's doing it, right? And what is the purpose? So yes, there's a question about ongoing. Yeah, there's some ongoing maintenance. But if you just want the hormones, all you need is a doctor's appointment. SHBG. 1 second, I'm going to check that out. Gene, does liquid D3 metabolize better even if I have to take it several times a day? Yeah. And it's also easier to take more, right? If you need to take a high dose, it's hard to take a bunch of pills all the time. Jay, I missed why UGGB. So UGTB is what clears your DHT. So if you are missing the UGTB17, you don't clear your DHT well, which means for a man, greater risk of prostate enlargement and hair loss, and overall inflammation from test androgen toxicity. And CYP3A4 is 16-hydroxyestrogen, which for a man is not as much of a problem, but it can lead to testicular cancer if it's not dealt with, which means clearing it with the right detox protocol. Barb, estrogen dominant. Yes, phytoestrogens certainly add to the load and can become toxic later. Soy, yes. Stay away from any. Yes, you want to. So remember, we're talking about total load, and there's so much going on that you're constantly trying to chip away from. You know, you want to avoid all this stuff, right? So and anywhere you can, you're constantly doing it, including phytoestrogen in your food and your plants. So to make a total dose of vitamin D one time and then to split the difference. So that's an algorithm error. Wendy, if you don't mind also emailing client care about that, because it looks like there's an algorithm error in your report, which we'll fix. It shouldn't say two different things, but look at your ability to transport and bind. If those are off, you need multiple doses. And we're over time now, so I'm going to flush through these last couple. High levels of selenium, but I'm not supplementing with selenium. So could be your food. A lot of nuts have selenium. We have seen that high levels of selenium can be problematic and lead to brain fog type issues, etc. So it is something to investigate and figure out. We don't specifically look at a selenium metabolic pathway, but I would say look at your food and examine what you're eating. But that is, of all the detox products, that's one that is studied to be problematic if you have too much, especially with things like brain fog. What was the version of the gene that has trouble with air toxin? GSTP1. GSTP1. Early wrinkles is antioxidation. SOD2, SUD2, SOD2. You want to look at how your mitochondria is functioning. And you also, by the way, in the hormones, if you're more androgenized, that also leads to early wrinkles. If you have more DHT, that also leads to early wrinkles. You need estrogens to maintain skin health. If you don't have enough, or if you have too much testosterone, too much DHT, leads to early wrinkles. So you want to slow that down. Marta, Nina is also 3 times. Wow, we got a rare combo here. 2 people with that unique trait. Do you need to take glutathione if you have 2 copies of GSTT1, 2 copies? So if you have 2 copies of GSTT1, you can take glutathione, is what we're saying. If you don't have 2 copies, you shouldn't use glutathione, use precursors. Are either of the UGTs, if you want to try anyone's own replacement? Yeah, so this is much less of a concern in women. It's more of a concern for men. You'll know that it's a problem if you start experiencing hair loss. And it'll happen quite quickly. So if you start to notice that, hey, what is all this hair falling out? You want to reduce things a little bit. Wow. Everybody here has high B12. Jason, email address. Lori, let me type it in here. It's actually in the chat. If you look at the chat right now, it's in there for Lori. Stephanie, what genes affect calcium? Was it a diet issue? If you have too much vitamin D, it can affect calcium. If you have endothelium inflammation, it can lead to calcification. So if you think about you have to look at your detox genes and look at if you think the combination of your detox profile plus your environmental nutrition inputs may be leading to too much free radical or toxin activity in the blood, which means endothelial inflammation, that can lead to calcification, right? High calcium levels. Yes, Nina, you're right. We're gonna figure that one out. So I'm gonna make a note here. I'm actually picking up my phone right now. to make a note about investigating this B12 phenomenon. We're gonna look at that tomorrow. Yeah, there's a commentary about the smoke. Yeah, New Jersey and New York. I know that outside of the city, it seems to be bad in Toronto. I mean, I'm on the south end, as south as you can get, where the city ends, so I didn't see much, but I've heard other parts are doing not so good. We also had a fire in the city, a city called Newmarket, which is just north of the city. A bunch of houses burned down, like in the smack dab and just north of the city. Vegetarian with high B12. Wow. Something is in the air. So methylation issue, yeah, it could be MTR. So I'm gonna investigate this and get you guys an answer. Anyone that wants to know. Maybe I'll bring it up on the next call just as like an opener, just to answer it for everybody. So 8 pills of continual G, I would say, first of all, this has been going on for a while, so you need to reverse years and years and years of problems. I would say that if you're not feeling better, you probably need to open up your detox pathways. You need to be pooping and peeping more, right? So for some people, they go detoxify, but they don't create an exit first. And then all of a sudden it's not actually clearing and it actually ends up back in the blood, and then you don't feel better and sometimes even feel worse. So I would say work on that, the clearance, the exit, the pooping and peeping. And then I would say continual G may not be the answer. Maybe it's detox optimizer. Like we have the precursors, NAC, glycine. Those are the two things I would say. You're welcome, Nina. Also high B12 with Robert. And Patricia is saying also high B12. Yeah, so we'll look at that, we may do a high B12 mini study here and see what's going on here. Okay, so we've been through everything. Which we're 9 minutes over, so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time also. Again, thank you for answering those questions also, because it's very helpful to us. I've been asked many times, and I don't do this, but I've been asked to talk to you about leaving a review for the book. Anyone here that has bought the book and read it and enjoyed it. Our intention is to write many more, to write a book just about hormones, a book just about fat, just about children and behavioral development for children. So the better reviews we get on this book, and the more that I don't profit from the book, yes, there's a payment that goes to me. It all goes back to research. I don't take any of it. For me, the book is about educating, getting it out there. I'm not trying to be a best-selling author. I'm trying to be an educator so that everybody raises, all ships rise, right? So if you have read the book, The DNA Way, leave a review at Amazon, Google Books, anywhere where you also deal with that type of thing. And that will help us be able to write more books, which is what we want to do. Then we do want to write a book just about female health, and all of what we did today. Imagine a deep dive just about that and just unraveling everything from the genetic perspective. We feel the world needs it. So there's a link right there. You can leave reviews if you'd like. If you've had the book, if you haven't got it, grab it. It's called The DNA Way. So The DNA Way, it's at thednaway.com. You can get it from anywhere, from Indigo, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's all over the place. Take a look there. And thank you again. Now, again, regarding the question around the programs, we really want to know just what you need. So let us know, and there may be something that we didn't think of and we're never going to think of, and don't be afraid to tell us. So you're welcome to everybody. I see all the thank yous. This is our intention, is to give you what you needed, right? So this is why we're here. So good evening, everybody. We're 11 minutes over, so I want to give you your time back. And yes, you'll get a replay and you'll be able to dive deep, take this, compare it against your genetics, take your time with the replay, dive deep. It's a tool for you to keep using whenever you'd like. Thank you again for joining us. Good night, guys. Your genetics are a phenomenal thing. A 40-year-old person who looks and feels like they're 28 isn't because they left things to chance.
They're doing things differently. Chronic disease, aging, poor performance. These are all the result of wrong choices. But how do you know what the right choices are for you? And what would be the impact if you always made the right choice? What if you can change the day you die? When you see those first wrinkles, those gray hairs, or a call from the doctor and they say, "I need to see you, your test results are in." We've taken it for granted that this is meant to happen, that aging and disease are just a part of life. Well, what if they're not? You can't feel cancer coming. There's no warning that dementia is on the way, and so we think these things just happen. We get sick, we try to treat it, but it's too late. Well, now there's a better way. A way that puts us each in charge of our own destiny. Genetic research has advanced more in the last 3 years than the last 30. And this personal instruction manual that's in each one of us has finally been properly decoded. We can now get ahead of disease or even reverse it, allowing us to decide how we age. Our scientists have clinically studied over 5,000 people. We've sat in front of each and every one of them. We looked at their hair, their skin, their mood and behavior, their medical history, everything about them, all overlaid on their DNA map. We then understood where the biochemistry of your trillions of cells and the instructions of your 22,000 genes intersect. And with that, what choices each one of us needs to make to slow down aging and catch disease before it happens. I have no doubt that with the genetic insights we're seeing today, chronic disease will soon be a story that we tell our grandchildren. If you understand why chronic disease and aging really happen, you also understand that they are truly optional.